So what I did in Midvaal is a benchmark. So the currency in Shiloba is that you must get into government. You must deliver. Your output is what will determine where you go. We need to build the types of schools which are safe, where a child going into that school, in the public school, cannot tell if they come from a poor household or a rich household. We don't buy uniform, we get uniform. So we believe in free education from early childhood development until your first degree. Shiloba is a constant work in progress, watered and nurtured by the tears of our mothers who see their children wallowing in nothingness, in unemployment, in drugs, in all these things happening. But also disappointment, the fact that the government they had hope in has disappointed them and delivered the reality we see today. And further nurtured by the tears of young people who are saying, but what about us?
King David Studio podcast.
He doesn't like to be referred to as a former anything anymore. At some point, he was fine with it. He's adjusted slightly to it. Why not the former? We'll find out. We have today a leader of Shiloba. It's a new political party. It's a year old now. It's quite a number of political parties that are a year old. Even Rise Mzansi is a year old. Are you well?
Very well, thanks. And thank you for being so generous to allow us your platform.
We're more than happy. I like you, man. I think you're a cool guy. You know, we followed your politics for a bit. You know, a kid that started when he was 18 joined the DA. What was going on with you?
I blame my mother.
She's active in politics.
She's been very active in politics. In fact, her side of the family, the Khatebes, have always been involved, in fact, in politics, but more following the PAC school of thought.
Land Fest.
Yes. And then my father's side was the ANC side.
How was that union in the family?
It was always strange when they met. At least it even was worse when they discovered that my mother has joined the Democratic Alliance.
Oh, she moved from at some point.
It is her who introduced me. Because now I was following, I'm a firstborn child, you're helping your mother, and eventually you get roped into politics. You must go pick her up, accompany her. And then eventually you are there and you realize that, you know what, from birth I've been surrounded by politics. My mother's side, there's been political talk. My father's side has been much more involved. I mean, we're from Togoza, Kumalo Street in Togoza, just a few meters from the hostel. So right in the thick of things that were happening, and growing up as a young child, you saw these things.
Jeez.
So I was telling someone my first time I saw a white person was when they came to look for my father's younger brother. Check Bafana. So it was the first time I saw.
How old were you there?
I was about 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
But I can still remember this is the first time I saw a white person.
Yeah.
And then we had an older cousin who was there. Then they grabbed him by the sides.
Of course.
It was the first time I saw a wage in my life. They lifted him. Tranka Adula just below.
That's how they used to do things.
So very interesting, just thinking, reflecting back about this very long but short political journey.
You use an interesting phrase, long but short. Do you feel you've been in it long already?
It feels like it more so when people read out, when they introduce me and they read out what I have done. Sometimes I feel like, it is an obituary.
Because some people live a whole life until 70, not having done some of the stuff that you've done.
Oh man, I've been incredibly fortunate and blessed to be put in these spaces where I could be able to make a difference in people's lives and even try. So fortunately, I've been influenced significantly by my mother.
Yes.
And her spirit of not giving up, always trying, I think is the one thing that she made sure that we all have. So just that constantly persisting.
Jeez.
Yeah. Inkani.
Has she continued to be a member of the DA?
She left when I left.
Oh, my God. Do you know, interesting, Julius tells a story when he was starting his political party and had a conversation with the grandma, had to convince the grandma that we have to go.
Yes.
You have to come with me now. And grandma was a little confused by this moment that I have to go with you, but how about the Mandela ANC. And that is something that we continue to deal with even today in our politics. But your mom decided it's time.
In fact, she asked me what took me so long.
Oh.
I mean, what took you so long?
Yeah.
But my grandmother from my father's side is still an ANC Women's League card-carrying member.
And you won't change her?
How am I going to start that conversation?
How old is she now?
She's now in her 80s. I think late 70s, early 80s.
By my mom age.
So how would I start that conversation saying, leave this thing? To her, it has now become a fellowship. It has become this, when she's not at home, she's doing all of these things. It's a women's league.
Wow.
And I think that's fine as long as it keeps her going.
Yeah. And you can't.
No. I even doubt that one if she'll make the correct choice on ticket. In fact, we must organize that. I must accompany her.
Correct choice is voting for you.
Absolutely.
You doubt it completely.
Hey, was that what overhaul? Old people.
Let's talk about them, because I find them to be an interesting bunch. And you can't ignore where they come from.
Absolutely.
And some of us, because I'm older than you, some of us, we are part of her life and part of the new life. Define that constituency for me. Who are those people?
It's those who do not only speak about apartheid, but know apartheid. They have lived it. They've got the scars to back it up.
Yeah.
So they were part of those who went through the transition from being called a kafir and to be seen as less than a human being to all of a sudden there's Mandela. So they literally saw that move as this is the person who brought us this.
Yes.
It was the name first, the individual first, then the party second.
Actually, even the mystical figure.
Absolutely.
First.
Yes, because there's all of this excitement. There's been this struggle to keep the name alive and push for release of Mandela and various others as well, which to some extent I think is one of the travesties of our history.
Yeah.
You know, we just, when we think about those prisoners, we think Mandela only. And I think it's such a disservice to the rest.
I guess those that are not fully informed.
Yes. You just think the popular ones.
Yeah.
But it's that generation that has really tasted this and then tasted democracy and also the gains that they received from the democratic dispensation. I mean, things like your social grants and a number of other things as well. And they've experienced the two different life during apartheid and post-apartheid. And I really think that has strong ties for them. It's difficult for them to imagine moving to another party.
Yeah.
But I think the socio-economic situation is forcing them to consider strongly.
But you have to acknowledge that maybe where they come from and the transition, they're not having to deal with the past, not having to... now their street is tarred, irrespective of the quality of the tar, but it's tarred. Where more of your cousins who were regarded as people from afar are now here, living here amongst you, than they were in the rural areas. Yes. And where when you go visit your family, they're no longer using a pit toilet, they're using a flushing toilet in the part where you used to regard as kodi plasing back in those days. That change is huge. You can't ignore it.
It's material. And that's why I always say to people, our argument or point of departure when we evaluate the past 30 years of democracy is that it's not true that the current government has not delivered, has not improved the lives of South Africans. And we also say it's equally incorrect to use apartheid as a benchmark for development, because I think we are better than that.
Yeah.
But it's a fact that we all can't dispute that there has been development in our country. And those people saw it, they lived through it, and they experienced it. And it's difficult to change your minds, their minds rather, if your point of departure isn't acceptance there. Because there's another reality. They've got children, they've got grandchildren who are suffering.
Yes.
And now they start to see that this cannot continue any longer. And that's the thing with society, because you look at the time and space you live in now and say, but I know where I come from. But what I see today, I don't have the same hope and aspiration or I'm comfortable that my aspirations are in safe hands with these people. So then I'll do something different. And I think this is where things are going now. As difficult as it is, things are going now. I think for us, we're actually attracting quite a lot of our parents.
Yeah. Oh, are you?
Absolutely. When we are doing our door-to-doors and we speak to the mothers, the grandmothers, they say,
okay. Because she realizes her perspective. Correct. And then she realizes that the younger one will resonate a lot easier Correct. With what you're selling.
Absolutely. And in any case, Stats SA says to us the biggest unemployed population sits between the ages of 18 and 49. That's the very same population that does not vote.
Yes.
So this population, kiddy dependence of their parents. So it is real in reality in South Africa that Mayonale 65 is still supporting her children with the grant. And her children is 35, 24, 16, or even different ages. People that should be already working for themselves.
And giving back.
Now, when your pension is not for your sustenance as a pensioner, but is to look after your dependents, these are even your grandchildren. So this is not sustainable. In fact, it has put us in a worse off situation.
Yeah.
So when we address this, we're actually speaking to the hearts, because I'm speaking to a parent. When I'm addressing this plight, I am speaking to the heart of a parent.
But you also probably acknowledge you're also speaking to a conflicted parent.
Absolutely.
He's like, yo, man.
What is even worse, Bongani, when happy.
Oh no.
What action say?
Jeez.
So in Midvaal, I must start. Whenever I go to people's homes, that's where it starts.
You start from the...
I know. I must explain.
Do you find it difficult, though, what your journey in that regard, when you consider that very small but important detail?
I think it was necessary for growth.
Okay.
I think it was necessary for growth. I needed to learn. I mean, I was in the DA for almost 15 years. Still that young. I mean, leaving the Democratic Alliance when I was 35. And I post 15 years from volunteering, helping my mother, and then to Action SA, where I learned the skills that you need to harness and have and sharpen when you are in a startup political party. And
got to see
exactly. Now I draw on the same skills now to try and leverage on those and shorten my learning, because I've already seen and experienced it. So for me, it's been good because it also speaks about my growth as a person.
Yes.
From my foundational, the DA part for me is my early childhood development. I look at it that way.
It's kindergarten.
It's kindergarten.
Very long kindergarten.
And I think what I learned alone from Action SA is easily my primary and high school in 1 year.
Wow.
The amount of skills I had to learn and the situations I was in, and it prepared me for now, for what I'm doing now. So I really think, and I'm deeply appreciative to those leaders who gave me a platform. So we might differ now, but when we're still together, I really enjoyed the support, even though we differed many times with different people, and the platform as well. And Midvaal residents, I really built a special relationship with those residents.
Trust me, we all knew about it, all of us. Some people didn't know, what is that? But Midvaal, what is it? How many people? We all wondered, who the hell are these people? And because you were the guy that really put them way on the map.
I was very fortunate. In public governance, it's rare where you get into a position and your predecessor has laid a foundation and you build from there.
Yeah.
When I inherited the municipality, I didn't build from scratch. There was a foundation laid by Marty Wenger and Timothy Nest and the teams that work with them, and Albert de Klerk, the then city manager, municipal manager. So when I came in, there was that solid foundation, and I could build. And that's what I wanted to do when I left. I was obsessive about the conditions for my departure. So I was very obsessive about when I leave, how do I want to leave? What situation must be the
Because you know how you found it.
Yeah, so I had the pressure and the burden to give to someone in a better situation.
Yeah.
So I really thought long and hard about it. And that's why when there was turmoil in the DA with Musi's departure, I did not leave. I had to sit so I can hand over municipality.
Because you were dealing with your own issues.
Absolutely. So I had to hold back, finish what I had started in Midvaal, and hand over a municipality without any disruptions.
Yeah.
So when I left, there was no issues because when I came in, there was no hoo-ha.
No.
It was just silence. So I left. I came in silence. I left
In silence.
and I left the institution in a better place.
I'm curious, though, to know what motivated your mom to join the DA from having been an ANC person for so long. An active ANC person. She's inherently an active political being.
She's more of an activist.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So when she moved to Midvaal, she took up more of activism.
Okay.
And part of the activism she took up was around the socioeconomic issues in the ward where we lived in Daleside.
Okay.
And she fought with the then mayor numerous times in public meetings and would also send petitions. So eventually they
then ANC mayor or DA mayor. Okay.
Correct, DA mayor.
So she was coming in with an ANC hat, fighting this DA mayor.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then eventually they said, we think there's more value you can add. Little did I know that she might not be the one who gets all of the benefit. She's actually opening the door for my journey.
Incredible. Was she surprised at all at how much you got to achieve in that particular journey?
Maybe she was surprised to an extent, but I think she understood my journey and the role she needs to play in my journey and supportive of my journey. But she puts lots of pressure on me when it's about governance and people. And I mean, I would go to my mother's house and just to distress or just see her, and I would find people who cannot find me in the office. But Lile, to come and tell me.
And here you're mayor.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
So they come to complain to my mother.
Interesting. Sputla in Tshwane had the same problem. Where people will go to the mother to say, Ntwana,
there's some kuluma naye manje. But I think for me, one of the things she has taught me is humility. I tell the story that one time where we had a meeting, or an occasion where Oprah Winfrey School of Girls Leadership was doing a prize giving. So once a year you would meet Oprah, and then meet some famous people that she's brought with her. So you go there wearing a 3-piece suit, you're excited, you're rubbing shoulders with billionaires, and then the next thing I want to pass by at home and you're still feeling... So it's around the corner.
Still
from
feeling
home.
proud.
Yeah, so you still that feeling.
Yeah.
And I get home and my mother's sitting outside and then I tell her to Moshelizi. So and she says this in front of the protectors that were assigned to me.
Wow.
So these guys open the door for you and you get out and then she says, so hey, mama, now why am I?
You can't be a mayor in here.
So then the humility, I was always brought down back to her, with my sisters as well. Then you just become a brother.
It almost seemed intentional.
I think it was.
Yeah.
You could see that there's a spring in the step.
I like that. I really like that, actually. That you make the whole mayor of Midvaal come and wash dishes.
I was reminded, Bjorn, and I think many people saw that in me because I grew up in the environment. Many people, when I was mayor, did not see me as the mayor. They saw Bongani still.
Yes.
And I appreciated that. So the public meetings were spirited. Very few people were calling me, we're not Bongani. So I think that also the accountability was even more. And at the same time, I mean, I know these people and I cannot fail them. I cannot fail them. So you live in the same environment. I can't misbehave. All of a sudden, I'm a different person.
No.
Now I've affected my whole community as opposed to doing my part, which is just enabling them to live their lives without any hindrance.
Do you find that when that spring in your step is now becoming a part of your DNA because you've been there so long, and this may not necessarily apply to you, but you find that people tend to embody it a little more than they should, because we have the same experience in terms of our history. Irrespective of which part of the country you come from, a Black experience quite similar in a lot of ways.
Yes.
You know, even explaining it would be an unnecessary exercise, because a lot of people know exactly what it is. And it has all those roots in it, you know, some that you speak of in your party now, Ubuntu and all of that. And do you find that we sometimes forget, which is what your mom was trying to do?
We do forget. So I was assisted by people along the journey who always reminded me.
Yeah.
Who always reminded me that, have you forgotten who you are? You are a public servant. This is what we expect of you. And I find that the perks of the office, many people end up thinking it's an extension of their personality. The vehicles, the protectors, and just how you are treated when you get into a space and you are there.
People stand up. and for me, at the end of my time, meanwhile, I volunteered that I am leaving. I communicated this a year before 2021. So 2020, I communicated I'm not coming back. Yeah.
So I had a full year to prepare myself to divorce all of the perks that I've been accustomed to for 8 years. So I remember when I took the vehicle in 3 months before my time ended. So I was alive to the fact that I need to get used to it. And
so you say you didn't want it anymore?
Yes, and I'll use my car.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Let me get used to it now.
So it's not a surprise.
Hey, when it happened, when it was pulling out of the driveway, hey,
so it did affect you.
It did.
Wow.
So even though I volunteered, now I'm making the case to say, imagine those that are told at midnight, Rona or I.
The Zuma days. You know what the Zuma is? You would be told.
Yes.
You'll read it like us on Twitter.
But you are gone.
Yes.
So for me, and just taking, I think the first 2 months before moving into Action SA was just to heal and understand that my life as it was has changed. It's no longer what it was. Wow. It's now a new thing. And I need to understand when some people who are calling me by the title now call me by my name.
Yeah, the title is gone.
It's gone. Now they call you by your name. So those things you need to go through. Now that I've been through, I have a better understanding of these.
Jeez.
Because in fact, I volunteered, but nonetheless, when you divorce from them, you really feel it.
But then if you feel the disconnection, it means you had completely embodied the life and everything that comes with it. Why this question matters to me and why I hang around it for so long is because I feel that's at the heart of a lot of the problems we have in our country, where we put you in power for one purpose, so you can look after us.
Correct.
Because we can't all do it. Somebody will raise their hand and volunteer. This job is...
I am going to do.
It's a volunteering project. I will look after you.
Yes.
I will make sure that all the things that you and I used to complain about, now I will look after them and make sure that they happen. And once you're there, you get all these other things. And my worry about it is it's at the heart of our problems, because once you're there, your disconnection from us is far wider than it's necessary. And you didn't suffer that problem. Well, maybe you did. Let's hear.
Look, there were times when I felt I was drifting away.
Okay, yeah.
And then I would be pulled back.
Okay.
So what I introduced to self-govern myself, I used to call it reintroduction of humility.
Okay.
So from high points, I would go into Scalable and clean up. So it was intentional that I need to keep touch with this reality regularly.
The ground. Literally.
Correct. So I need to keep touch with the ground, with my finger on the pulse. So whilst I am exposed to different levels of human beings, businesses, people generally, I must not forget here. So when I've gotten to what I define as the high highs, then I must volunteer to go down there and do something and be with the people.
Sure.
And I found that self-regulation working much better because you can't have people, if my mother's gone, what's going to happen? And others. So I had to learn the self-regulation approach to saying, I must regulate myself. Now I know this is happening. I must bring myself down.
Yeah.
Because there's the people. And once you start doing that, I started relating more and more to people, because I would be in the communities where there's genuine issues more often than people expect.
Yes.
So they start seeing you regularly, then they start,
You're here.
yeah, you are here. But no, I'm checking. This house has issues. This house there, this street has issues. So then my motto became, I must find the problems before the problems find me.
Okay.
But by then, I've mastered the subject matter of the entire responsibility of mayor and all the reports and committees you lead. And with mastering subject matter, I can manage my time better to also master management by walking.
That's it.
And
Got
seeing,
you.
why is this taking long? I saw this resident.
Now you know.
And now I know.
Yeah.
So when you put the two together, you really move at a different level, and you get the institution moving with you. You know, at the time I felt at the height of Midvaal's performance that we were moving in the same heartbeat. It was synchronized.
Jeez.
I mean, the plans, actions, delivery, report back, consequence management. It was moving seamlessly.
Yeah.
And the more we did this, the more you did not need Bongani to be the face of anything, because I was at the back and things were happening, which is my job. Many people confuse our jobs to being the one that's running all over the place. Only accident, then I'm here. Then I'm here. And all these things, I must be steering the ship.
Yeah.
I must ensure that 3,000 employees appointed by this institution are doing what they should be doing consistently, reliably, and over a period of time. So things happen. Then you forget, there's Bongani. We have clean water. Bongani is doing his job. You must literally forget when there's the proper governance.
Interesting. It's a conversation I was having with my nephew a few days ago, that at the heart of leadership is invisibility.
Yes.
Because you deliver.
Yes.
We don't see you. You never need to tell us what you've done. We must experience it.
Correct.
So that there must never be an announcement. Because the water is, and maybe people tend to feel it's thankless if they don't know that I'm the one that did that.
Then it's clumsy, as someone else said.
Yeah.
You are clumsy now.
So you feel you need to be seen because they do that.
It's if you are more worried about short-termism and you're more worried about building your name quickly. I was more obsessed about capturing the institution so it performs a particular way, consistently, reliably, and delivers. And then I would be known for the output, which no one can dispute. And output repeated.
Yes,
consistently.
Yes.
So I was more obsessed about that. So then what the obsession started with the realization that there's a disadvantage I have. I am 26. I don't have institutional memory. All these people sitting around me, when we have conversations and debates, they rely on institutional memory. So I must acquire this thing very quickly. So
to speed up your institutional memory.
Correct. So that reason of saying, in the past we performed like this. So
you don't have that.
I don't have that. So it meant you must stop living and apply bottom to chair and read.
Sure.
So within a year, I was able to catch up and surpass them. So I was able to then say, in the past financial years like this, at this stage, we're performing like this. So this performance has dropped. So I need to intervene very quickly before there's a crisis. So once you start doing that as a young person, that's the substance. You can't lead without substance.
Yeah.
Then substance and there's confidence.
Jeez.
Then you can lead.
Did that commitment affect your schooling?
Absolutely. I had to stop every part of my life.
You.
I lived in the institution.
You lived as a mayor.
I lived Midvaal. I was obsessive about this terminology that they were using. You know, you get into a new space, IDP, SDPIP.
What is that?
And this and this.
I hate that stuff. Just so you know, if you ever become president, get rid of these acronyms and abbreviations. Hey, we must know what these things are. And mayoral committee meetings have acronyms for days. I'm sure you know that. How, my daughter? And because I read live reads on radio, every time before I read it, I would read it quickly again and say, I don't know what that is. And I don't think, if I don't know,
what about the listeners?
The average person would not know just as much as me. And I would immediately change the live read to read the full thing because I know the person that wrote it lives in it.
Yes.
To them,
Yes.
it's common, that phrase. But to us, we don't know what it is. Absolutely. I was reading a live read for Department of Forestry and Fishery and Environment and all of that. It's written DFFE.
Yes.
And I said, if I read as DFFE,
no one's going to catch up very
It's
quickly.
not immediate to the average South African. And that's a problem. So you had to live inside.
I had to live inside that. I literally had to live, and I was rescued by a few officials. One who was in finance, who had been there for more than 15 years, was 7 years from retiring. And another one in corporate services and a few others. So eventually I realized that these are the people who know the institution. No one goes to them, but eventually, because I'm very curious, I would go to people's office saying, I need to understand, what does this mean? What happened here? What happened here? And I found that they were very open towards me and started saying, you know what, can I come to your office after 5?
So we give you a crash course.
Correct. So the learnings, the real learnings for me started at 5 o'clock in the evening.
That's amazing.
So I was really assisted by people who saw that this young man really wants to learn.
And giving up school in that regard must have been a difficult decision.
It was an extremely difficult one, but I'm a bad multitasker.
Yeah.
I'm really bad with things like that, with school and governance. So fortunately, at the end of my term, I had gone back and took a year, then finished my degree. And now I am planning on going back to my unfinished degree and finishing that one, then doing an honors and so on. But you see, now when I read governance, or when I sit in lectures of governance, it's so real to me because I can move from the theory
to the practice,
reality, and be able to color in the space in between. But nothing goes without sacrifice.
Yes.
You have to give something. Nothing comes from
and you gave that up. You gave up school.
I gave school. I gave my life.
Yeah.
And everything in between. So when my peers were enjoying, when my peers were living, I did not. No, I didn't. I skipped a lot, and I'm very happy. I'm not regretful, or I don't want to go back. No.
You don't want to relive.
No.
Maybe in the township they call it late adult.
No.
You don't want to go through late adolescence.
No. I'm happy with the price I paid.
Yeah.
And I'm very comfortable because I know myself better and understand my journey, and I know the price you have to pay for success.
Jeez, man, you were mayor at such a kid.
26.
26-year-old.
When I look at those pictures, I laugh at myself. Right?
Yes. Wow. That's crazy.
And worst of all, my colleagues, the MMCs, the youngest one out of the 5 that were there was 55, and I'm 26.
Jeez, you're as old as their kid.
Exactly.
Their oldest child.
Exactly.
Wow.
So I had to persuade people like that to follow me.
And you had to tell them what to do.
Correct.
Did you find it tricky?
It was tricky, extremely initially.
Yeah.
Because they also don't trust you. As the party sees the potential in you, but they know that you've been here for 2 years, but you don't quite know it. And at the same time, they can see the hard work I was putting in, but they're not too sure yet.
Yeah.
So over a period of time, I had to prove myself. Like any leader, if any leader does not prove themselves with output, then they're not worth anything. So I generally say to people, you must don't give me all your trust. Let me earn it through my work.
True.
So take what I say, but believe what I do.
Yeah.
And then over a period of time, this establishes our relationship of trust, and we continue that way.
South African black people have an interesting relationship with white people. Historic, not our creation. We found it like that. And it was enforced. At some point, it was law, how to relate to the white man. And you then had to run as a mayor, as a young person, as a black young person who had to say to older Afrikaner men and women what to do.
Yes.
How was that challenge?
That challenge was, and as I say in the beginning, it was extremely difficult. There were times when they would be very subtly patronizing and condescending. And I had to look at there's with leadership, you can use your soft power or you can use your domkrag. And often domkrag is very limiting. You don't take it too far.
No.
Then once...
Domkrag, kids don't know, is when you kick the door and you don't care what happens after.
Yeah, so I had to persuade. My leadership style is more of persuasion.
Okay.
So I must have the ability to persuade stakeholders. So it means I must do my work properly. I must carry myself fitting for the position. So I need to also become a father to these very same people.
These older people.
Yes. Ooh. So at a stage, the colleagues knew when they had personal problems, my office was where to run to.
Wow.
So now I'm counseling, giving a shoulder to older people.
Sure.
Because of the relationship built over time and the trust and understanding that you come to me, it will end. Yeah, I don't go out and people know, but I would also assist you of what you must do. Yeah. So these were people at one stage I knew that over holidays, school holidays, you couldn't get any productivity out of them.
Because they're dealing with, and you can't even relate.
At that stage, I didn't have a child. So I had to start planning. Which days can you work? What can you? So I really had to work around the team that I had and make the best of it. And I think it's those engagements and interactions that built the trust. So it moved from just Bongani, the young mayor, but to our mayor.
What?
And seeing the community also buy into that over a period of time was quite exciting.
Yeah.
When I remember addressing my first meeting, and I could see these people were nodding their heads and saying, "I are sure."
They're questioning the young person.
Yeah, what they see. Mara. Le batho ba batho ba Bongani as bazo koropa mntana
mo. Yeah.
It was even worse for black people.
What?
Bayakuyuza la belungu. Awuboni next. Abona umntwana lona badlala ngaye.
Yes.
So you take the worst of abuse from your own people. And you really work hard and focus. And for me, it taught me situational insulation. Because then you really insulate and you focus.
Yes.
Everything happening around you does not matter. It's about this that I'm working towards.
What's the measure of truth in the statement, bayakuyuza labelungu?
I think, the DA grew significantly when there were more black people.
Absolutely. During the Musi My Money days.
Correct.
Yes.
But at the same time, I also say I benefited. Yes. So any person who's a deployee of their political party, one can say political party use.
Yes.
Because people fall in love with people and they follow people and they feel, you know what, when I hear this minister speaking, no, I'm going to follow because of this one.
And their popularity benefits the mother body. Yes.
Correct. So there's this, and it's also, I think the thing about feeling that white people will use is also embedded in some level of insecurity. Sometimes we project our insecurities to other people. Because our paths won't always be the same. We won't start at the same place and end up at the same place.
That's true.
Some of us will start differently and end up and find each other along the route. So for me, I found that the more they say that, because many paranoid, I'm double questioning everything. Is it true, this thing?
Yeah. But do they want the bridge? Who's getting the bridge? You start questioning everything.
So those things are there. But for me, I really think that any deployee of a party must win people over and bring to their party. And I think in recent times there's been more about popularity than output.
Yeah.
I think output, the difficult with output is takes time.
True.
Popularity is instant.
No. Yeah.
So
it's a TikTok video.
So absolutely. So in fact the PR is bigger than the problem.
That's it. Yes. You shoot a TikTok video, you're done.
Absolutely, you're done, and not the substance. But I mean, building yourself up in that environment and mastering and shining and thriving in that environment, I think has the potential to inspire others.
Yeah. To
say, but if Bongani can do in this environment and we can see his work, why can't we follow different paths or even try and put yourself in those situations? For me, I think that's the one thing I really wanted to do was shine my light so bright it inspires others.
Do you know, I want to jump probably 2 years, it seems, 2 or so years to your story. It's amazing. Your story is so, it moves quickly. I want to jump and I'll come back. I want to jump to scaling. Like all businesses, you start your small little, fish and chips in your corner. It's doing well in your street. It's doing well in your community. It's doing well in the township. And you start thinking of building, franchise or making it bigger, even if you still own the other shops. That's basic scaling in business. And that's essentially what your current move is to scale what you did in Midvaal and scale it nationally.
Correct.
Let's talk about the achievements in Midvaal and then quickly move them to a scale.
Yeah.
You tell me. Pick a few that you feel are scalable solutions.
Look, I think for me, governance. So governance, I start with governance because without governance, nothing will happen. The state of our government, municipalities, provinces, is as a consequence of lack of governance or the decline of governance, and therefore the consequence is that your internal control diminish. People do what they want when they want. There's no accountability. There's no consequence management. Then the benefit that must go to communities does not get there because it stops Gokonga, Taboo, and all these other places where bags are exchanged. And instead of the community benefiting, individuals are benefiting at the expense of the community.
True.
Now, then these same individuals come back, Baba Bopramadlis, and the very same community they're stealing from. And
meaning they drive the nicest cars.
Yes.
They have the nicest houses.
And those bags. A politician wearing those men bags, you must know this one. You must presume him guilty.
Oh, before.
Before, if you see a politician wearing those men bags and tight shirts, and slim jeans, you must presume him guilty.
You're describing some people I know here.
Presume them guilty.
Shiny shoes.
Presume them guilty.
Yeah.
Presume them guilty. Even those ones who wear those safari shirts. I'd say most of the short ones.
Yeah.
If you see a politician wearing safari shirt, the short ones, you must know he's guilty. Whatever if there's an accusation, we must just resolve his guilt.
Poor fashion. They're blaming it all on fashion. Like they shop at the same place.
Absolutely. They think alike.
Wow.
So let's fix governance.
Yeah.
Midvaal, we had proper governance, proper internal controls, and proper mechanisms to evaluate what we are doing, to plan firstly, and then to implement and to evaluate and give the overall benefit to residents.
Yeah.
So the bedrock for anything is governance.
Yeah.
Now then I can talk about projects. So I'm not going to talk about so much about water and those things because it was the core responsibilities. We improved year on year. We built a couple of reservoirs, wastewater treatment works and the likes. I'm going to talk about two which for me were closest to my heart. One was Sebenza Mbogodo.
Okay.
Which was a project we partnered with a few banking institutions where we offered black women, informal traders, 0% interest loans.
What?
So if you borrowed 10,000, you pay back 10,000.
That's unheard of.
That's what we did.
That's bad business for banks.
No, in fact, what we found that the payment rate of those ladies was quite high. In fact, there was a similar program that I went to visit in Mpumalanga in 2012. I think they use inspired by, I think it's at Grameen or Gremlin. I think Grameen Banking, Bangladesh or Pakistan. I can't remember the original India. So they pull women from the same community and then they raise a loan. So they need to repay that loan to raise another loan. So the accountability measure is that if I want to scale, you have not paid, we'll go to you.
You're slowing us down.
Correct. So they
almost
found,
the stock fell.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So they found actually that those women, the payment rate is 99%. Wow. It's far better than payment rate from males.
Whoa.
So I remembered that when I was seeing the plight of these women. And I'm saying, but these are the real entrepreneurs. So I asked a lady who was selling acha, so explain this business so I understand. How do you make a living? And she explained that with one big bucket costs X amount. Then she breaks it down to these buckets and she does this. So I said, then how many times do you repeat this process? She said about 7 times. I'm like, calculator fast. Hey man. So if I were to help you with getting you to fund your 7 times as opposed to 7 times during the month, but upfront.
Okay.
So now you are increasing your scale.
True.
So now you actually can move deeper into your value chain. So now we saw that the 10,000 injection there would actually release 30,000 rands.
Wow.
And then she must repeat this process.
She has more resources to make it slightly bigger.
And 10,000, I mean, to you we think it's nothing, but I saw material benefits.
Wow.
So there's more than, I think, 150 ladies in Midvaal who did that. And the second part of that development was getting their daughters involved.
Okay.
They started employing their daughters. Some subcontracted their daughters, so it's a separate business. I would argue strongly that, no, this is a separate business. But it's a separate business, even though she supplies me. But separate business.
And look at the business education.
Absolutely.
That comes with all of that.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the banking institutions that we worked with was providing that part of the soft skills and education, financial management. We got a number of them to register fully to comply. Because often you start with registering, you've not traded.
Oh, yeah, of course.
These ladies are already trading. So we started there with trading. So let's scale and then let's get you registered.
Yeah.
That's the first project. I think I'm really proud of 7.
And you feel it's a scalable idea.
It's a scalable idea.
Nationwide.
Nationwide.
But how because it sounds to a lot of extent like banks saying we will help, because banks are businesses too. It sounds like it's something that they say, you know what, it's R1 million. It's not too much. We can help. Even if we lose, it's not a lot. That's why I question the scalability of something like that.
It's scalable. What is the budget of the Department of Small Businesses doing?
Okay. So use that money.
Correct. I saw them as small businesses. So these are the entrepreneurs we keep talking about. It's just that they can't talk English like me and you, and they can't put in a proposal.
Yeah.
Those ones don't start with a proposal. They start by doing.
That's true.
So we need to find a way of taking that pool of black women who are in informal trading and really supporting them in the informal trading and getting them to move further into their value chain so they can move from selling the fruits to actually producing the fruit ultimately. It might take some time, but I think it's a journey we must commit to ensure that there's sustainable development with this group of ladies. I think I start there because I see their vulnerability as well.
Yes.
And the fact that already they are doing something. They are not ones who are already in the employment line, the unemployment line rather. They are already saying, I've employed myself. So let's grow that part. That is scalable because it also says to me that, I mean, Stats SA says the woman population is higher than the male population. And African households, 60% of them are single parent led. If it's a parent, it's a mother. So the ones who are facing the brunt of inequality, unemployment, and poverty is actually black females.
That's true.
So if we don't do something with assisting the current generation of black females, while also saying, how do you obsess about the question of building black families again?
The families themselves.
Correct, because the ultimate solution is families. For now, there's there, but you must still resolve this and uplift it. But at the same time, let's resolve the question about families.
Yeah.
So for me, I look when I look at the challenges, I often start from economic point of view, because everything is economics in relation to the country and scalability of many of these things. If you don't fix it from an economic point of view, then there's no sustainability around that part. So for me, that project was very important because I could see the unlocking of potential from these ladies.
And the socioeconomic solutions are almost obvious.
Absolutely.
What other one? You said there's 2 projects.
The next one is another project that I called Scalable for young people, where we got young people, taught them social entrepreneurship, encouraged them to get into entrepreneurship. We decluttered the tender space and really took them through the entire process. And when I left the municipality, a number of them had actually started transacting with the municipality and in the private sector. The biggest point of that project is that over, I think, 200 young people more or less went through this project, and about 10 of them were creating the bulk of the employment. There's one who was the most successful. His name is Wes. I met him a year earlier when we were starting this program. And his biggest concern was, where is he going to get his next pair of shoes?
Oh.
Then fast forward to a year later, he's telling me he employs about 54 people.
What?
He's got 33 grass cutters, and he's got a few trucks now from transacting with municipality and a few other people. I could not recognize him when I saw him again.
Same guy.
Same guy who was telling me that the intervention you put, yes, a few dropped out, but I was able to even employ those who had dropped out. This program.
Yes.
So what I'm also suggesting with that is that society will pay a hefty price to unearth real entrepreneurs, and it's a cost because you must go through others. Others don't pursue entrepreneurship because they are genuine entrepreneurs. It's because they are unemployed. They want something. So for an entrepreneurs, one will create 1,000 jobs.
Yeah.
So we must appreciate that it's a research and development cost to find these
one out of the 200.
And we must never cease. We must never hold back and say, but it's costing us so much to find these guys. These guys will make a big impact.
Yeah.
So part of the argument we make is that we must increase research and development budget in the country. We must start being obsessive about solutions for the problems we have in our environment, and how do we grow from there, and what do we bring to the world that's going to make us unique, as opposed to just taking what China has developed, Singapore has developed, and just being early adapters of their technology. We must really rethink. So for me, these two programs, beyond just the built environment of water, those things were happening.
The regular
stuff.
The obvious.
Yeah, the obvious, we excelled in the obvious.
Yeah.
So beyond the obvious, we also tried to intervene in the economy, assisting the most vulnerable young people and black women.
You know, when you talk South Africa, we call them the obvious, but they are problematic. The obvious are where I think in this election, the obvious is where voting decisions will be made in the obvious, because we are dealing with the obvious now. We're dealing with a powerless country. We've been without load shedding for a bit. I must just say that.
How many days? 29, 26
days
days, somewhere there?
Yeah, it's not bad. Not bad. I must admit. But for us to even say this.
But they're preparing us for stage 16.
I hope not. We all hope not. There's actually an ad that talks about stage 16. It says stage 16 when you have 10 minutes of power the whole day. We hope not. Of course not. The obvious, I think it's where the voters will decide, because the lived experience is quite tricky. And the obvious are water and electricity and healthcare. The quality of the education. It's pit toilet in some societies. It's I spoke about water already. Just flushing can be a problem where there's no water. It's all of those. And you say the obvious where...
We're done. We dealt with them.
Here.
We dealt with
why do you think we're struggling with the obvious? Now, remember... You're running for national office. Yes. Your story is different. Your perspective is different. What is the problem with the obvious?
Leadership. It starts and ends with leadership.
The governance issue again.
So leadership, governance.
Yes.
So now let's look at the individuals who volunteer themselves to go and, to Mami, to go and resolve these things.
True.
What is the benchmark?
Okay.
What do you use as a benchmark to say you qualify to come into public sector and to be of service to us? Is it your record of what you've done before? Or is it because your faction won a Congress? So it's a combination of those things. And part of our belief as Shiloba is that we firmly believe in meritocracy. So what I did in Midvaal is a benchmark. So the currency in Shiloba is that you must get into government. You must deliver. Your output is what will determine where you go. It's not your popularity. It's your output. And remember, output can be confirmed by independent sources and the people themselves.
On the ground.
So if you have an individual who's wired that way as a servant leader, understands his task as in his mandate, and has insulated himself away from all of the noises and all of the entrapments and all of the niceties around the position they have, and knows that I live or die on this. So we copy the Chinese model.
Okay.
And we've just raised our heads to say, what are they doing to select leaders, these ones?
Yeah.
How do we sift rubbish out to ensure that the best ascend and they serve the country? So there's no way now any political party can say to you, the people who are presenting to you are the best of the best. It's a lie. It's not. In fact, they might be the best of the worst.
Why? What makes you say that?
Because there's no benchmark that tests and filters. Correct.
We've seen them write this test and they passed it.
They've passed it. They've done this. So there's no point where we're saying you must start here and prove, go local, that you can serve your people. And then move from there to another level to continue serving your people. Instead, we've got such a high turnover of individuals every elections. So you can't have continuity in that environment. So ultimately, it creates, it destabilizes intra-party politics. By default, if you are the governing party, when your intra-party politics are unstable, it then finds its manifestation in government.
True.
So then it continues this uncertainty, this disruption, and not clear about where you are going. So once your leader and your governance is not of a particular standard, the output is what we see. So we see symptoms. ESCOM is a symptom. No water in Gauteng is a symptom. A symptom to what? When you lead, you also plan for long-term population and also services and infrastructure, because it doesn't happen by mistake. You know, in-migration is happening like this, so it means I must move like this. I must build the reservoir there. Yes, this community wants 7 roads. It's gravel. They are complaining, but they can wait because this unlocks growth, and then I'm able to come back a year, 2 years later
and
to
do
fix.
that. Yeah.
So we don't think economy. How do I invest to unlock return? And then return I can invest elsewhere and cross-subsidize other areas of service delivery. So it's not leaders who are thinking that way. Some leaders, when they see problems, they think profit. Again, ESCOM has problems, diesel sales.
Yeah.
They are getting diesel, let's sabotage. So we can extract from this. So some problems are problems because politicians want to extract money as quickly as possible from the fiscus.
Got you.
So if we insulate ourselves...
Doesn't look obvious, though.
No, it's very complicated. You also see them busy, ne?
Yeah.
But you think Baspana Auntie? No. They are making you feel that the PR is bigger than the problem. So they can extract, keep extracting. So your leadership, your governance, your planning, and your implementation. And consequence management.
When nonsense is
correct.
Yeah.
And not having so consequence management is important. It needs to be brutal. It needs to be thorough.
Do you feel the brutality of it is important?
It's important.
Because you're still dealing with humans.
You must show people. You must make an example.
Yeah.
People, sometimes you motivate the best out of people by showing what you do to those who steal. You must invoke the fear of God in them. I can't steal. There's consequences.
Yes.
So once you do that enough, then their human behavior will adjust to the new material conditions. And where they know that the leadership is not doing anything wrong, that's why they can do this. Because I can't go back to say, but go on. Yeah, we are together in the crook place. So it's those things. So leadership, governance, planning, implementation, consequence management. So that's just simplifying governance. But SA is much more complicated because you've got problems that manifest in the economy. We've not increased what we produce. Our GDP is not increasing. Our labor absorptive areas are declining.
Skills development, mismatch. Yeah.
All of these things is a leadership problem because people cannot foresee the future and realize that, okay, now there's a problem with the economy. Labor absorptive areas are declining. Unemployment is increasing. Do we increase with grants 350? No. Why don't you just subsidize these industries to sustain these jobs? So it's because we've also tied ourselves to international treaties that actually work against our interests.
That's it, yeah. Many of them.
So someone must say, but our point of departure must be in the interest of South Africans. So how do I take my people to a better place? So I must subsidize farming. I must subsidize manufacturing. And I must incentivize people who employ others as well. And then I must be punitive to those who are sitting with trillions in reserves, not investing in the country and sitting waiting.
Increase their tax.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I must decrease their tax when they invest in their profit and they're employing more South Africans. But at the same time, how do I reduce what politicians and administrators steal in between the year so that finds itself to service delivery? So it's a number of moving, bouncing balls at the same time that you need to think about. But you need to have, I think sometimes politicians respond to symptoms, not the root cause. And they think ayasebetsa. And sometimes responding to the root cause means time. You must have the ability to stay the course.
Because the root cause requires a bit of patience to address. Yeah,
absolutely. And our leaders can be weak. I mean, ESCOM could have been dealt with some time ago if they were very honest and went on aggressive maintenance and said to the country, listen, the next 7 months, you might not have as much. We're going to do this aggressively. What they're doing now should have done much years later instead of decommissioning plants and engaging in IPP expenditure, which is not serving us. I mean, why would you, as a country that has not fully got into industrial development, agree to reduce your reliance on coal? And you are not even one of the people, countries that are emitting,
excessive,
below, above 0%
Yeah.
So our leaders like these nice things and platforms on the international stage. I mean, hey, these South Africans are progressive, not realizing that this progressive thing that's affecting
your people.
Absolutely. So there has to be a stage where we'll look after South Africa.
I have a weird analogy for that. You are the poor child. We are the poor kid. In a fancy, multiracial private school. And we are the poor child because we get invited to Abu G8 and all of that.
To observe.
But we get invited. Yes. You know, we're in the room when all these big things are spoken about. And they would stop for a second and say, what do you think? Just so they acknowledge you in the meeting. But we are the poor kid in the very, very expensive school. And more often than not, we find ourselves agreeing because you were like, man, I can't say no. I can't be the only one that says no to this. They say we should go to Dubai. I've never been to Nelspruit. And now they say, let's go to this fancy place. I will figure it out. Yeah. You leave the meeting having agreed to something that is so lofty in relation to your reality.
Correct.
And then when you come home, we say, how was that? It was nice there. The place was beautiful.
These speed trains.
You know what I mean?
Bullet trains.
We should do that. But you don't even have a road that's working properly. You see, we find ourselves in meetings where maybe it's the very strength that you speak of, that we need to be bullish enough to say, this won't work for me right now.
Yeah. But I believe it's also a generation thing.
Okay, explain that.
When you get to that stage, you also become very tired, and your ability to really imagine the future is not something you can rely on for a long time. So you also become self-centered. It's about also the realization that you'll soon be in your grave soon. So the things that you could not do then, you must try and do now with the opportunity you have. It's your last chance. Meanwhile,
whether it's for you or for everyone. For you.
For you as a person.
Okay.
Yeah. Umhla ukuphela sowufikile. Now la yalibona ithuna lakho now. Kodwa ufuna ukuphuma uthi ngizohamba ngila. So I think that generation mindset is my generation. And the mindset of my mother's generation is not the same.
Not at all.
So we want things done, and we are much more confrontational to mahua and these tendencies and that sort of thing. We agitate towards dealing with those things because we really want to deliver that dignity back to Black people. So I think the leadership is at a stage where it cannot lead any longer. It must actually facilitate the future taking over. Because we see the world differently. When we look at these situations, we won't look at them from a position of saying, in the history, in the past, these were our allies. No, when I look at it, I'm going to say, what is in the interest of my people now today and in the future?
Yeah.
So can I sustain, can I increase the interest of my people? Fine, they will give you a medal and an award that you helped us in the past, but we don't live for the past. I live to facilitate the future to a different environment. So that does not exist. And the fact that we like going outside to look and coming to replicate, no one says, but let's do our thing here. We can be very unique. our built environment can be very unique. We don't need to have all of this tech, just to take China and just come plant it here. We don't want to do that. So we must really believe in our architects, in our engineers, and lead. That's why when I led in Midvaal, I realized the value of having competent engineers. You lose and win an election with engineers.
What?
No one will tell you this, but I learned. You win and all lose an election with engineers.
Make us understand this.
Engineers facilitate the building of these roads.
Yes.
And where the population is going, assisted by other stats as well. But most importantly, the delivery of services to people in a reliable manner. So once you have an engineer who does not just see themselves in the built environment, but says, let me look at the holistic part of this municipality and the people.
Got you.
And where the vision is. I believe we must forego building this road. There's no settlement yet there, but let's build the following. And you trust that person, and in 4 or 5 years' time, it unlocks serious growth to the benefit of everybody. Because they can see everything. They understand the spatial development framework as well. So with a proper engineer who can also maintain your infrastructure and ensure reliable water, sanitation, electricity. And when there's a problem, your downtime that you've agreed to in responding to the issues that is adhered to. So the engineer is a backbone of delivery. Engineer are the ones who help us come to the site and
cut the
ribbons. Without engineers. So I know if there's engineers watching this, I'm really fond of engineers because I saw their value. The value, what makes this thing work. Once you've got competent engineers who are not, these narrow-minded engineers, but those who are also obsessed about your spatial development framework for the area.
It's a study of human behavior. Sociology comes in because you can tell where we're going.
Correct. And you can tell there's more. We've been getting the leaks in this settlement. The complaints have been increasing over the past year. So by the time Hammanskraal is Hammanskraal, it didn't start there.
Of course.
It's gradual.
Of course.
Someone says there's a problem there. Let's intervene quickly. Let's go and see. Okay, this problem now affects 100 houses. We think we must spend 4 million to resolve this. And then someone says, no, this 4 million, we can build 17 roads there. Let's leave it. 2 years later, that 100 has now jumped to 10,000. It's at a scale you can't control.
It's $1 billion now to fix.
Correct. And once it's $1 billion, politicians and administrators, they love it.
Do you know, we don't think that way.
I've observed.
We think it's $1 billion, it's a problem. It's where are we going to get that money?
My comrade, hey, fix your things. Then kickbacks to the party, then individuals, and all sorts of things.
Sure.
But the point I'm driving home is the importance of suitably competent professional staff who understand the political vision and understand the institutional vision and also move out of a narrow space of my role is. But saying, okay, let me understand from this position, let me understand from that. Then you can consolidate this human energy and be able to deliver. That's how you're able to find the problems before they find you. You are ahead of the problems. You're doing your maintenance. And we are quite ruthless about doing maintenance. So if you don't do your maintenance, whenever it comes to the fore, it's going to be embarrassing. And it affects human...
Fix it. It's like your car. Maintenance is as basic as your car. Otherwise, you'll get stuck.
So something so simple we don't do. Some would still say, fine, the cost of maintaining municipal infrastructure is borne by ratepayers. There's a declining revenue. They give you all sorts of excuses.
There's some facts to that.
They do. But I also believe that people don't pay for... When there's no value, people don't pay. And when they know if they don't pay, there's no consequences. But I'll level and then complain. So on the one side, I had to be heavy-handed in debt collection.
Jeez.
So there's people who really, really hate me in Midvaal for debt collection. But I had to ensure that I collect 95% of what we build. So I can give them what they are accustomed to. So it's a full cycle. So I think from a nation point of view, and I'm using Midvaal as an anecdote about that, is demonstrating that the leader needs to be able to engage at the level of detail. And a full appreciation of consequences for citizens and the output, and must improve the following for my residents. So you need a leader who can look at the picture and see a million bouncing balls, but able to place them in context at the right place and how this is linked to that, but equally be able to say priority are the following four.
I listened to you, and I see a guy who runs government well, but I equally see a guy who has to galvanize voters.
Correct.
Different thing. Having to stand and sing and dance.
Yes.
That's another thing. You have to be able to do both. Some leaders, I always use Thabo Mbeki as an example for this. It wasn't a natural space for him to do that, to sing and dance. Baduba Umsholozi,
Do that.
break into song any second, dance and do that. And what type of politician are you in that regard? Using that as an example, do you find it easy to play in this space, this other side, the side of pomp and celebration? And
look, to an extent, but I love humble engagements.
Yeah.
And maybe it's deepened by the fact that Arina Chelet.
Okay.
So I'm forced
as a party. Yes.
I'm forced to walk door to door. I started with 7 people. Now I've got 10 people. Then there's 20. Then there's 30. There's that growth in front of people. As I born, some laughing and but Bongani is persistent. What is this thing? Yes. So it's the persistence and gradual. So I can do both. In fact, I tell many people that the bulk of the structures in Midvaal in the DA were started by my mother and myself. Now I must go back there and start that. Then I must go to Ekuruleni where they don't know me and park my car and walk with 2 people.
Yes.
And walk a street, dedicate 2-3 hours and come back with 3 people. Next time go back again and it's 7 and it's 10. So I had to invest in the scenic route, in the walking that door to... You should have seen me 10 months ago. Now I'm back to size 34. Now I'm back to size 34
yes,
now.
Yes.
So the amount. So in fact,
the grind was
the grind
even harder.
Absolutely, but I enjoy it. I enjoy interacting with human beings.
Yeah.
And I enjoy getting those questions from people and saying, "But when Roboni, you are doing this, you are doing this. Explain." And it's in those interactions where you build these relations, and people see that okay, no, we understand. We never saw that side of it, and then I get to be told and scolded, or no, you fumbled. You shouldn't have done that here. Why did you? And the famous one, why didn't you join ANC once? Why didn't you go home?
Is that a common question?
It's a common thing.
Yeah.
It's a common thing.
What is your answer to that? If there's an answer at all.
I tell them I've built my home.
Yeah.
Yes, I've built my home. So and in any case, it ceased to be a home when my parents left.
Okay.
So it has never been a home for me. So when I've built my home.
When your eyes opened up, they were not in that house.
No. I've never been in the internal politics at ANC. If I go there, I'll probably be worried, what's happening here? Because I like things that have not just complain and long speeches, but what are we doing? What's the problem? How do you fix it? Okay, let's move. Next thing. Now to comrades, quote Mandela, quote
Mandela.
No. I want things that move because leadership is about output. So I must increase my output as well.
Yeah.
In spaces I find myself. But in those situations, I've found that one is able to be myself on the stage in politics. There's a lot these days. There's a lot of pressure to be someone you are not.
Okay.
And mirror someone who's doing well in that space. The disadvantage is that you'll fall into a trap and become the person you are not. There's only one Julius Malema.
That's true.
There is only one. And no one can outdo Julius Malema by being Julius Malema.
Never.
So you must also, as a leader, say to yourself, I am not Gayton McKenzie. I can't do what he does. Mina, I am Bongani.
Imagine that pressure Gayton McKenzie.
Exactly.
That's hectic.
So I am not neither of them.
Yeah.
I am Bongani Baloyi. I know that sometimes I can be dry. And I know that I can be boring because I just love governance and dealing with these things. I know, and that is fine because we are not born to be other people. We are born to be yourself. And I think at a stage, people who appreciate this type of person in leadership will gravitate. Even now, I'm surprised when I look at the growth of Scalable and thinking, but hey, man, where are these people coming from? I started with 10 people here. Now there's so many of us. There's so many. And on a weekend, we can have so many activities. That means people knocking on people's doors simultaneously in different parts of Gauteng. And more so in parts of Gauteng, people have forgotten. The peripheries. Lesedi, Deep Slot, Alex, Stretler, the Annadale, those informal settlements go Annadale. Atteridgeville, go Mamelodi, Hammanskraal. I'm moving
in those circles.
In those circles. So those people, some don't have their phones, suddenly the WhatsApp. Yeah, they send me WhatsApps, not WhatsApp, please call me a lot.
Yeah.
But when I go into that space and I see we don't even have posters and t-shirts, but people are moving with Shiloba.
Wow.
It's something bigger than me.
Why should a South African voter that's going to elections now vote for you?
We are proposing the following things, which we'll release in our manifesto, and I'm showing them in advance here. The first one, we want to restructure government. What do we mean? Firstly, we mean that we want to move away from constitutional democracy to parliamentary sovereignty.
Explain.
That means when Parliament, in parliamentary sovereignty, has made a law, there's no court that can overturn it.
Okay.
It is law and binding on everybody. This side, you can run to your constitutional court to challenge the transformation.
What we're going now.
Currently.
Yeah.
And then a constitutional court makes a judgment, which is impractical, which considers value of human life or this person's life against the group interest, but their value of life is equally important. But the rest of us is the same court that will say, before you evict people who have occupied a piece of land illegally, if you do so after 48 hours, you must identify suitable accommodation for them when you move them. So I firmly believe that our transformation was stunted. When the negotiators of our democracy at that stage were thinking about it, I think on this one they made a miscalculation. Because the minority can run government through the courts and undermine all parts of transformative aspects via the court.
Yeah.
Because still 30 years later into democracy, the lives of black people, if you look at what they take home, is worse. People I know will talk about the improvement of services and all those things, access to basic things, etc. But if you just look at what me and you take home compared to what white people take home, which are a fraction of our population, it still shows a major imbalance.
Yeah.
And transformation fixes that. Racism can be fixed by transformation. These laws assist, but Brother David, if we as black people decide we're going to move our money from Pick and Pay and ShopRite and support a black retailer, you will see how we are treated. We won't negotiate. Because they start understanding that we've got choices.
And we understand our power.
Right now, we don't understand our power. Worst of all, our government is not enabled. So in the mining part where they can eat with white people, they facilitated BEE deals. But in the key sectors, finance sector, in retail sector, and various other sectors, there's nothing that is owned by a black person that competes with the major ones, even in media as well. There's nothing that contests with Naspers.
That's true. Let's go back to the constitutional versus parliamentary.
Correct.
Our parliament hasn't been exemplary over the past however many years. You can cite different examples. It's the Constitution, a constitutional court that may have saved us once or twice. Where, using an example that's not particularly popular, but it's documented very well, where a constitutional court judge president said to a president that you're a constitutional being, however your behavior doesn't reflect that. It was a constitutional court that slapped a president on the wrist and said, what you're doing is unacceptable. When our parliament has been cautioned and been told many times that you are not being exemplary, you're protecting
an individual,
not the people. And yet you were placed there by the people. We can cite a recent example. There's another recent example of something similar that can be debated. But your approach, doesn't it then give too much power to people who have proven to have failed once or twice?
Look, you cite very good examples that have demonstrated the value of the constitutional court and the constitutional democracy we find ourselves in. Then it also points to the issue of meritocracy on selection of persons that go to parliament. And the fact that many of them do not appreciate that your oath of office weighs differently on you. So once you get there and you take an oath of office, it's not true that it's your party first, then the nation second. So part of what we need to do is have a big understanding or appreciation from public representatives. So once you've taken an oath of office, it's about the country. Nothing else above. So it's the interest of the country. And I really think the new school of leadership, like me, who speak this language, is going to start placing it on record there and insisting on some of those changes. It might take some time, but it does not also mean we must deal with that only first, and then only when we've gotten it right, then we move towards consolidating parliamentary power and the majority power to be able to direct government to behave a particular way, and uplifting our people as well, and also ensuring that our people can be part meaningfully in democracy and also enjoy the democratic dividends that we are all speaking about. So I really think the two work hand in hand. Whilst this has been, but it's quite symptomatic of the current 30 years of leadership that we've had in the country. And that's why we're raising more of our hands to say, but we need new leaders to get into the space. And we need to have protection mechanisms that say, in the event this happens, there's a route that needs to happen. But I also think that the Constitution, insofar as transformation, is very narrow. And some people like to say, but there's Patrice Motsepe. Because you have now Patrice Motsepe there, there's Saki Matozoma there. I mean, you've had 30 years and this is what you have. So how long are you going to continue with this?
Are you saying that logic says there's some people that have been successful in that space?
Yeah, I think there's some people who've been successful, but the consolidation of power into the institution of parliament is very important to achieve the type of objectives we want to achieve. Part of these objectives, when you look at the situation in the country now, it requires extraordinary measures to return back to normality. The issues around illegal foreigners, issues around service delivery, issues around corruption, issues around lawlessness in the country, violent crimes in the country. It does not require the ability to work within the confines of the current limitations. It requires unprecedented steps. And part of the remedy for us is to ensure that we move to these unprecedented steps to create the platform, to create the laws to save our country.
But doesn't your theory assumes a particular type of parliamentarian? Inherently, it says only if we have these type of people can we achieve that. I worry about humans.
Yeah.
We look at you now, you're a trustworthy guy, let's give you that. And you walk in, you are even surprised at your own changes. And suddenly you're a new guy to the one that because you've never walked this route before. And once you walk on these red carpets, they feel nicer and you've changed. Some people used to say, our constitution assumed all presidents will be like Mandela. You know, the nice guy, the easy guy. And then that didn't happen. Yeah. So that's my worry about your approach that assumes that we will have a guy who, remember, and I'll use the small example, when Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma defied ANC and voted the opposite during the Phala thing, everyone gasped. Even opposition was surprised. It was a moment, it made headlines for weeks. That is, you see, that is someone that stops and says it's about country, not party. We paused and we were shocked. You are assuming there's 400 Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma in parliament. I think it's a stretch. And help me see it differently.
It's a fair point, judging on the historical performance. But you can also assume certain things about the Constitutional Court and the justices themselves. And they can err. Yes, absolutely. There's a few of them, they check each other's minority judgments, there's all those things, that's fine. But for me, the central question is about the fastest way to develop and transform the lives of Black people must be facilitated by an environment where the majority of the power lies in the parliament, which empowers the president to act in a particular way. So for us, part of our manifesto is to say, how do we restore and bring with ourselves the African kings and queens who are legitimate leaders of their nations, but have been cast aside. So to have to go through a constitutional change all the time to factor this in and that in is cumbersome, but you need to do in such a way that you move with your role players. And the best way to facilitate that is within that platform. I concede the argument about individuals, but you also can write the law to preempt certain things, to say if this is a situation, then you have the following recourse to deal with the following situation in this case. But what I'm weighing now is the power to be able to change.
Should
Correct.
be in Parliament.
Correct, to be able to change.
Yeah.
And what makes me excited is that these elections have also facilitated new parties like ourselves who are contesting. So this elephant is being chowed by all of us. Lions, mosquitoes are feasting
Everyone.
to bring down this elephant.
Yeah.
It brings a number of opportunities and risks. But at the same time, I think we need to rethink what we understand by being patriots in South Africa. We don't understand. Even our opposition parties don't understand what it is to be a patriot. They would leave our parliament, go to the United States to speak about our own country and badmouth the country just to score political points so they don't invest and hurt this president and therefore affect our interests.
Yeah. Do you know, when I sat with the leader of the DA, I missed that question. It was in my notes, but I never asked, why did you go to America? Anyway. Yes.
Because we don't have a sense of saying we are patriots. It's once we leave the country, it's about defend South Africa's interest, even oppositions. Yeah. Instead, oppositions are more aligned and leaning towards G7 nations, where they even confidently write to say, please come and do oversight on the IEC in the elections, because we don't trust the IEC. And even write to the US, who has a recent history of contested elections. So these are the type of, it illustrates your point further, these examples I'm raising up, because it's not people who are saying, we're South Africans, let's do this together. So I firmly believe that the future will be facilitated at a greater pace, and the risk of it are there. But we need to write into the law the escape clauses and how to prevent and mitigate against certain things happening. But where power lies is very important.
Yeah.
It can't lie more so with laws that we make that will follow a particular process with persons who are appointed by politicians. I fundamentally disagree.
Which is what we do now.
Yeah. So ultimately, one can even make the argument that we're actually living in a judicial democracy.
Where it's the courts.
It's the courts that ultimately decide what happens in government, because every action that one takes as a government can be reviewed.
But, then allow me, so there has to be oversight.
Absolutely.
There has to be someone who is not even interested, in inverted commas, who's minding their business. And they get called every time you walk into parliament without your pants. And they say, what is he doing? We can't do anything to him. But you can help and intervene and tell him to put on his pants. Somebody has to...
Oversight and intervening is two different things.
Okay.
So Parliament has the mechanisms of oversight, where NGOs also play a space in oversight, forceful oversight. They extract accountability because sometimes Parliament has let us down. Do we then say, is it Parliament or is it the individuals? It's another conversation.
Yeah.
And it goes again to how these individuals come to being in the first place.
That's it.
And how we mature in our democracy to start getting individuals that are about their country.
What was their intention in the first place?
In the first place. Yes. So the intention is the prestige, not the output they can give for the country. So for me, it's a tricky argument because it's always the individuals, but the institution is built to do a particular agenda. I don't believe even if we had the right persons in parliament, we would have transformed significantly, because I see the limitations.
I think that's the nature of our parliament.
The nature of our democracy is very limiting.
Yeah.
And it's designed in such a way that the minority always has an escape route, which is the constitutional court or courts, to be able to then deal with the issue of transformation or challenge government at every turn. Yes, there should be challenges, but it should be specific, I believe. And I firmly believe that laws should be made. Once the law is made, it's binding on all of us. Because where we are today, if we don't do something aggressive I think we'll be able to move from where we are to a stage where Africans are in a much better place and restored. Their dignity has been restored.
Let's spend one more minute on it and talk about Chapter 9 institutions, whose role is in some small but probably greater way similar to a constitutional court. But they can raise their hand when they feel like it, when they want to. Unlike the constitutional court, that has to be invoked. Somebody has to wake them up and say, "Kune nkinga." Chapter 9 institutions, they can do it all on their own. They can say, "We noticed this and we don't agree with it." Our constitution has them in the system. Isn't that enough?
I don't think it's enough. In any case, there's an interesting correlation. The weaker our political leadership have been, the more prominent the Chapter 9 institutions have been.
Okay.
So there's a direct correlation between these two things. The worse off your leadership is, the more prominent these come to the fore.
Use an example. And I hear you, but use an example so we go.
Look at the increase of cases to the public protector that are of executive nature, violation of the public executive ethics. Look at increases of cases to the Human Rights Commission on service delivery, because the executive is getting weaker and weaker, can't fulfill these obligations, and therefore these must be invoked. In fact, they're getting more cases.
True.
I would argue strongly, without having seen the empirical data myself, that the cases over the past 10 years to the public protector and Human Rights Commission have increased significantly. Amongst many others. So for me, I'm saying it's a direct correlation, because when leadership fails, it's invoked. And then the Constitutional Court, even the Constitutional Court, in my memory, I think it became extremely prominent during Mandela's phase. A little bit by Thabo Mbeki, then Mandela. Jacob Zuma became extremely, of course, for whatever reasons. But for me, it's the heart of the problem is leadership. If you resolve your leadership will be limited by the structure of our democracy. In any case,
that's true.
You will have to negotiate transformation, as opposed to implementing transformation when you control the levers of power properly. And I'm more of the school of thought that says we must locate that power where leadership can actually, but there's risk around that part, which you've equally raised. And there must be approaches to safeguard that are written in the amendments that we make at the same time. But firmly, for me, we won't be able to make even if all else was equal in the current system, the type of transformation you'll be able to achieve will be very limited.
Here's another point that goes back to your theory. In an environment where one political party wins the majority, you now have a new problem where if your approach gives so much power to Parliament, anything goes. Because they have all the power. You don't tell them anything. What do you say to that?
And you see, unfortunately, politics is about winning the right to make laws.
And
if you don't galvanize your people, persuade them and win their hearts and minds to elect you to go and deliver, then there's a problem with your politics. At the same time, there's a PR system in Parliament. So had we had directly elected people, 400 of them, we wouldn't have that PR system. So you can easily find the same situation where the same people, same party who are more popular in those areas of jurisdiction of the votes then are elected, you have the same thing.
Yes.
So either way, we need to build in mechanisms in place to ensure that once power resides fully on the one side, there's mechanisms to create a greater oversight, to hold people to account at the same time. But we strongly still argue that the best way to advance the lives of our people in a short amount of time is this type.
With a particular leader. Am I correct?
Leaders.
Did I conclude it right? With a particular type of
Absolutely.
Leaders.
It's very important, and we can't avoid that part in the space and time we find ourselves in. Laws are not written for a particular type of leaders. They are written for the collective to make a decision, and for those who dissent to be able to take it up and do what they
volunteer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but for us, we strongly believe that the fundamental change. Everyone in these manifestos speaks about this transformation. In our view, this transformation will be challenged at all levels So we'll spend more time in courts justifying this transformation as opposed to implementing this transformation. We'll spend more time in court speaking about human rights as opposed to doing what is right with illegal foreigners in the country. We'll spend more time in courts justifying why you must evict people from who are occupying these illegal buildings and hijack buildings because of these human rights lawyers and NGOs who are part of the space benefiting as well and who are using the human rights card of it. So there has to be a time when we are able to make laws that respond to our challenges as quickly as possible to deal with these challenges. Otherwise, our country is gone.
Same question. I imagine a different answer. Why should people vote for you?
Look, the second part is we will propose, in fact, we intend to reduce the number of, in fact, to remove all provinces.
Okay.
So you have national, then you've got local. Reduce number of municipalities from the 257 to 60 district municipalities.
Okay.
So then you would have national and district municipalities and 60 of them and half of cabinet. So it means in our view that monies and competencies will be devolved to the sphere closest to the people. And a number of these things which we believe needs to be closest to the people is police and education, closest to the people. So reducing number of municipalities and also scaling, increasing the budget and also following with human resource that is at province at this stage capacitates these districts, municipalities to be able to deliver better.
What's wrong with the current system?
Current system is not working. You have a number of shared competencies from national to provincial government, which are shared between the two. And then you've got competencies that are solely local government, and some are shared between local government and province. And often as a mayor, you find the problem that people want to engage you and complain to you about education, policing, and all these things that matter in the community where you've got no responsibility over. And yet you've got a provincial sphere where some of the money is, Gauteng is what, over 100 million in the fiscal case. They imagine that 100 million finding itself.
I think you mean billion.
Billion, yes, billion.
Yeah.
Finding itself in these local municipalities without too many executive authorities. So we must minimize executive authorities from a provincial space. You must minimize municipalities by amalgamating a number of them and creating viable municipalities, district municipalities, and giving them the right level of powers, and in and also assisting with human resources that is at a provincial level. That model, in our view, when we compared the model that Kenya did called devolution, has actually unlocked a number of efficiencies and improved joint planning and implementation on the ground, and actually gotten the bulk of the resources closer to the people where they are.
If you're saying the current model is not working, isn't that part of the problem? That maybe, and let's talk about local government, that municipality level. Isn't that because the people that are there, let's assume for a second that they're capable, but they're overwhelmed by the amount of work. And now you're saying, if you are a city of Johannesburg, we connect you with a Kuruleni and make one big municipality. Wouldn't that be even more a bigger task for these people that are already battling with Johannesburg as it is? Aren't you giving them more work to do?
So the districts would follow the current municipalities in districts. So Johannesburg would just change the name from a metro to a district. It's already a district. And so the one that would be a much more relevant example is Citibank as an example.
Okay.
Midvaal, Lesedi, Mfule.
One.
An amalgamation into one. Already there's existing problems there, but you need to join and ensure that the scale as well and its manageability as well. But once you're adding additional competencies that with additional resources, it becomes material. So and you improve joint planning, implementation, coordination, leveraging on the existing pool of resources and investment into that area. So the lesser municipalities are, it also follows a simple argument that you also spend less on the executive authorities.
Of course. Less on security guards, less on VIP protection.
Correct. So now it goes to where it should be going.
Yeah.
But once you start pooling it and ensuring that it's much more focused, we believe that it then enhances even the district development model that the government has in place. I think that plan stops short of saying, let's move towards this. Because now you can pool all of government. Now you'll have two spheres of government to really pull together, which will be the district and national.
It's a model. I find myself almost like I'm running for elections myself. I speak to so many politicians lately. I hear different versions of that approach. And you're not the first to say the center of government, which is provincial, is completely unnecessary. It hasn't contributed much. And there are those who believe in it completely. They say this is where we get to they call it, someone even used an example that it's like head office and there are branches. And this is a head office and the municipalities are branches and there's oversight and all of that. There's different examples of that. So I've heard that. And a part of me agrees with the concept. And someone also used an example that said mayors should not be voted into power, but should be appointed through interviews and job. It must be someone who is completely capable.
Yeah, we must just increase the standard for those who can stand for public office.
Yeah.
Right now, there's no barrier. It just says you must be an adult, registered to vote,
registered South African.
Yes. Say something about not convicted in the past 5 years, something like that.
And now,
recent now.
Yes, and now with the tiny little problem that the city of Tshwane faced once when they had a mayor for 2 weeks, it was you remember that mayor that was there for 2 weeks? It was you mustn't be sequestrated. Yes, all of that liquidated.
Yes, and all of those things. Nowhere there do we insist on some academic experience, some practical experience. There's no way. That's why I kept on saying the benchmark is so low.
Yeah.
The benchmark is so low. I wanted to say the benchmark is so low, past convicted criminals can find themselves as mayor. And I wanted to use it as in a hypothetical situation. Meanwhile, it happened.
It happened.
So the bar is so low.
Yeah.
So that's why this is one of the things we need to change in our politics by raising the bar, because now politics has become a space for unemployable people to try and find employment.
Yeah.
So if we don't raise the bar, we are killing ourselves. So it starts there. By remedying a number of these situations, we start there by filtering the nonsense out and ensuring that you get at least people with a standing, experience, and academics to lead.
Have you been in, because as there's mayoral committee and you deal with council, have you came across councillors that couldn't read or write?
So in our case, it wasn't there, but I recall getting a brief where I served in the Salga NEC for 2 years, and we were getting a brief of KZN. And they were giving us shocking stats about councillors in KZN who could not read or write. And they were presiding over big budgets.
Billions.
And one of the things that was happening, I'm not sure whether it's linked or by coincidence, is the murder rate and the turnover of councillors. So when you leave and you don't know whether you'll come back home.
And you're not a policeman, you're not a soldier.
Yes.
You're just a servant of the people.
You're just a servant of the people. We assume you're a servant of the people.
Yeah. Well,
you could be a Robin Hood stealing from the people and giving to your friends in that case. So that also shocked us because when you have that type of environment and you are dealing with officials, when they present a report in front of you, you can't engage.
No.
You just look aside. Agreed. But you don't understand the implications of what that agreed is because you don't interrogate, you don't engage, you don't understand, So that has a direct bearing on the quality of decisions made and the quality of staff appointed to head the administration. Because these very same councillors must be part of an interview panel that appoints senior managers of the municipality. So then it follows their competence and ability, whatever's ultimately elected.
Sure. Whether it comes through the right channels as well, those people that are appointed, whether there's other influences.
Absolutely. So that's why it's important to raise the barrier.
Yeah.
We are past the 30 years of saying anybody can do anything. It must be anybody can do anything, subject to meeting these stringent requirements.
The ANC has come up, has improved their criteria. I'm sure you're aware of it. Now there are people who do not qualify and they're not on the list because they don't have matric and so forth. What do you say to that? Isn't that a part of us as a country heading in the right direction towards that
the country
objective?
Has been demanding accountability and better leaders. I am not too sure whether they are quite successful in their approach or whether they can be trusted.
Okay.
in their pursuit for that type of approach. I am not too sure. In any case, when it comes to them, you take anything with a pinch of salt. They can tell me it's raining outside, but I'll love on.
Until you see it, you don't believe it.
Labantu baslimazile. Labantu baslimazile. No. Labantu baslimazile. You know, when you see, I often tell even community members, haleba bona batlo etsa door to door. Make sure that your pockets, there's nothing left for you to take. So it must be outside.
Sure.
So with what the step they are taking, I'm not very hopeful about it, because in any case, it's facilitated and led by people who don't share those type of ethos. So what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
So they are too big to change things like that fundamentally, and then it gives you substance.
Yeah.
It's too far down the line for any meaningful impact, positive impact, I believe. But nonetheless, we'll leave it to them. Right now we are saying we are building. So we are growing our own timber, taking our leaders through a journey to get developed and prepared for leading in future and doing all these things we need to. But we need a bench. We need to start somewhere and work your way from there to a stage where we're saying we have the most competent leaders in the country. And it's young people, capable young women and men who can deliver on the mandate, who can be plugged and played anywhere in the system. And you can be rest assured that they will deliver. So it's what we want to cultivate internally.
Yeah. Let's because I put a few things that I felt in your manifesto as a political party you would highlight. Your approach to education. One, you have to first think that there's something wrong with it. Maybe spend a minute or so describe it from your perspective and how you would solve it, if it needs to be solved.
There's a big problem with our education. The curricula is part of the problem in our education. The teachers, educators are part of the problem in our education. The union is part of our problem in our education. The lack of infrastructure development and investment is part of the problem in our education. The fact that there's almost, I think, 1 million children who start and don't finish is a problem. And again, I think that speaks to early childhood development as well, which feeds our education, but also it speaks to the societal problem of lack of families, which also has an impact into what's happening there. So we would then compartmentalize and say, okay, let's start with the curriculum. What do we do with the curriculum? How to ensure that the curriculum develops and nurtures critical thinking citizens, but they are skilled. So there's a strong argument from our side to say we must also include subjects like history, subjects like built environment engineering. So by the time a child leaves matric, they must understand how to build a road, build a reservoir, and how it's important for spatial planning. Okay. Never mind, there's a lot of focus on the internet, the internet order of things. There's a lot of focus there, which we also believe is important, but it's also quite important to start showing young people infrastructure. Part of that investment will happen, it will manifest this way. There's a strange culture in the country where when we're unhappy with government that it hasn't built a library, we go and burn a road.
Well,
so it's a very strange...
Some say it's the only language government hears, but anyway.
But it's self-defeating. So my daughter at school, they teach them about littering and all these things. So we're driving in the car, and I forgot myself, Linda, and I was drinking a juice. I opened the window to check it out, and she rebuked me seriously.
I'm glad she was there to tell you. You're wrong. All of us here are rebuking you.
So when children are our conscious about our environment.
And they're very good at it if they're well trained.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we need to build the types of schools which are safe, where a child going into that school, in the public school, cannot tell if they come from a poor household or a rich household. We don't buy uniform, we get uniform. So we believe in free education from early childhood development until your first degree. So when you get into that schooling environment, you know that you are catered for in terms of your 3 meals during the day. When you're in that school environment, you're in a safe space. We are also going to ensure that...
Costly.
It's costly, but it's much cheaper than rehabilitating children and getting children who drop out along the path, and having to pay differently in crime, in also some other cross-subsidization or support from social services.
Gotcha.
So rather take the cost to prevent an even worse cause. And remember, this is human potential we want to release and unleash.
Yes.
So for us, it's quite important to do so. And that will obviously be facilitated by fixing the economy, subsidizing parts of our economy to keep our jobs, but equally leveraging on what we have as a country, which is our minerals and a number of things as well that are available. And there's also, I think, there's also some interesting things that are being not explored, but discovered in terms of these minerals.
So absolutely.
Correct.
It's gas and
gas there.
All of that, yes.
Those things are exciting because I think that's how you fund a number of these initiatives.
Ask the leaders of the United Arab Emirates. They'll tell you.
Absolutely. And we've got multiple plethora of these minerals, and yet we're not able to do half of what they do. So I really think a child's life between those ages, between your 0 and 18, probably 21, government must really work hard to ensure that we put in the mechanisms to prevent you from saying, unless I steal. And then once I steal, you start your first crime, it develops a pattern, you're a hardened criminal. So we must be obsessed with finding you before in this value chain. Our school must be able to determine whether you are more technically inclined or otherwise. So we put you on a path to follow that purpose, as opposed to trapping you in the same environment which you are not inclined to succeed in. So we're looking at fixing the curriculum, ensuring that we also amend our policy of admission to ensure that no more than 10% of foreigners are in the public schools. Right now,
what do you do with them?
Right now in Daleside, where I come from, my mother's house is in Daleside, Go High. Renval Primary, 90% is foreigners. The language spoken there is Kiswahili, and what do they speak in Zimbabwe? Shona. That's the language spoken there.
In a South African school?
Yes. Go to Assemblies of God, similar thing as well. So a number of schools in Hillbrow, look at those things. So that mission does not...
But what should happen? This is a child whose parents came to South Africa and was a kid. They're here.
So there's two categories, and just to digress from the education part, and we're speaking in foreigners, there's illegal foreigners, and there's no debate about illegal foreigners. The law must take its course, because the moment we are saying this crime, because the moment you're coming here illegally, you've committed a crime, this crime we must suspend. Where do you draw the line? So we don't believe in regularizing illegal foreigners. You must go home. So the state must process you, and you must deal with it. Then if you are in the country legally, you come to the country and you apply. And if you want to bring your family, it must be clear. So now we have many people coming into the country not to offer scarce skills, but the skills compete with South Africans as well. It does not make sense. So it must be clear that when you come here, you offer a scarce skill, and then you come with your family, and that's permissible through a process. Now there's no process at all. In theory, there is a process, but in practice, there's no process. So now you are dealing with a lot of the children of the persons who are employed in our restaurants, in just the service industry jobs, which South Africans can still do as well, which I believe is incredibly unfair in your own country. So the foreigner does not have an inherent right to be in South Africa. You don't. You are a guest here. You apply. How can you
and just sit and switch on the TV.
Do whatever you want. Yeah. So it's part of those reforms we are going to introduce, which is going to make it difficult, because part of the difficulty will arise from the fact that our communities are benefiting from foreigners, illegal and otherwise. You know, there's a big rental market. Yes.
Yeah.
There's a big rental market in our townships and also in our informal settlements, where one person owns about 5 stands, and in those 5 stands collects rent, and they've taken someone's parcels of land. So that is very important for us to also remedy that. So there has to be laws we introduce vis-a-vis the police doing their part and immigration doing their part to ensure that we discourage people from bringing their families over here illegally as well. So when you come here, we must know why you're here, because it has an implication into your access to social welfare, health as well. So when people travel across the world, you buy healthcare in advance. When you land, you are properly covered. So it means that it must follow, even with the primary health care as well, that they mustn't treat you if you're not going to pay upfront, or you've not bought the insurance for you as a foreigner. So if you are illegal and you are in a difficult position, we shouldn't treat you because South Africans are so cross-subsidizing an illegal person in the
country. You realize the difficulty in that. And it now goes back to that earlier point you raised about human rights and all. Because now here's a person who's been in an accident, they're not covered, they're illegally here. The system cannot ignore that person at all. They cannot pretend they didn't see them. What do you do then?
There's anomalies, right? There's accidents. And then there are those who, in the first 10 days of the month, the bulk of them who go to a clinic or private or public hospital are foreigners. And South Africans, by the time they get there, there's no medication. So there's also that part. So
how do we deal? That's why I asked.
For me, that's quite important. Unfortunately, you can't get away from that one by creating some temporary issue that will cover you and look after you if you happen to be in an accident and you are in the country illegally. I think it needs a hardened approach. I firmly believe it needs a hardened approach because we are negotiating with absurdities. The normal today is the abnormal. So how do we bring it back to normality? It has to take some of the laws and stronger. I often made a joke to a friend that was trying to illustrate the same point I'm trying to do with you. The relation to the law under our government must remind you to a security guard or Muzulu telling you, umthetho awuvumi.
And it's your company.
Yes. Umthetho awuvumi. So umthetho mele ube njalo. And we must understand, there's no 10 rands, there's no cold drink that's going to change the situation.
So, and there's no negotiation.
There's no negotiation. So, back Ubuntu dictates to us.
We're not there anymore.
We're not there. In our view, our ideology, which is Ubuntu, dictates to us that we must have umthetho oqinile to protect the interests of South Africans and the lives of South Africans. Without umthetho oqinile, it becomes a jungle, like we are in. More murders per day than in a war-torn country.
Sure.
A fellow from the Western Cape was telling us in the debate this morning that over 24 hours, about 30 people were shot in the same community. It's a war zone. So do you respond to that situation with normalcy? We argue differently, and that's why we're saying no. We need to go on them a bit more extreme to get things back to normal again.
Let me let you go back and conclude the education.
Correct.
Thing.
So once we've dealt in also linking your early childhood, your child grants to a child being in a facility of early childhood development to ensure that they are a beneficiary and that you're not getting if the child has not gone into that facility. That's very important because we stunt the development of children in our communities. And the child goes to primary school in a safe environment as well. We need to increase the safety around the schools in our townships across the country because it has become a war zone. It's become a place where people sell illegal and illicit goods and get our young people on drugs and also the abduction of children and put into slave trade and also harvesting of organs. So it's quite nasty what is happening. So there has to be a deployment of the cluster of security in those areas. And I think one of the things the Premier should have done with his Amapanyaza is actually the deployment to guard infrastructure and along those areas because they're not suited and capable to deal with crime. So rather have them deployed to deal with various infrastructure points and schools.
Access points.
Yes. And much more strategic in line as opposed to what is happening now. So we will definitely have a unit that looks at school safety alone and avoiding certain things and ensuring that once a child enters the street where the school is, it's a safe zone. No one will play there because they know there will be consequences. Once you increase that in communities, you also discourage those who want to do anything around the very same community to be in the same area as well. So schools will be a safe space
and safety spreads.
Absolutely.
In that regard, once it's here,
broken window effect.
Absolutely, it starts spreading.
Correct.
It's the reverse of that. Yeah.
But it starts with the most vulnerable and most important, which is our children in the learning environment. So the learning environment for us will be a learning environment where children will go in from as early as 6 in the evening and out at 5, and also knowing that by the time they go home, they are full. Their stomach is full. So they've gone through normal education, extramural activities, and different sporting codes in that environment. When they go home just to sleep and see their parents, speak to their parents, and then that's it. But the bulk of what would have happened in a schooling environment where we develop the individual wholes, the entirety of the individual. So once you leave high school, you leave with your driver's license, learner's and driver's license. And then our favorite option is considering conscription, 2-year conscription.
Wow.
For young people who
really?
have no path.
Explain it, because that's historic.
Absolutely. It is historic, and we believe we can bring it back in the current contemporary to solve a number of problems. Currently now you've got young people who are sitting, wallowing in unemployment, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, crime, and they've got no escape. And the millions of them are earning this 350 doing nothing. In fact, it's not just doing nothing. I found out recently already this 350 has started a new trend. They are now on Betway.
Whoa.
Yes.
Oh.
Babe, check out 350.
You're saying this money is funding political parties.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's going to Betway.
Yes.
I was so surprised when I'm seeing young people around the library and I'm asking them, what are you doing? Wife, what are you doing with this wife? No, we also must check Betway.
Online betting.
Online betting.
And I have to tell you this experience. I was once at Spur and I'm at I was buying takeouts. I wasn't sitting and I'm waiting at the entrance. I buy what I need to buy and I'm waiting. They're busy, man, with their phones. But at a particular corner, I asked this lady, I thought it was TikTok. And I asked, what's going on there? And she says, hey, one of us won 12,000 yesterday. We all now playing this thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing. And I said, why at that corner? The camera doesn't see us. That's why we are all sitting. I said, this is just strange. So it has taken over.
Yes.
It's a part of our society. I'm not surprised it has found its way to our 350.
And the worst part of the 350s is the scale, the numbers.
Dude, that's why I say I'm shocked.
So we need to rescue our young people. We need to rescue them immediately. There's a crisis pending. There's an emergent situation coming with these young people who are sitting, watching their lives move past them. There's no hope. Their biggest thing they want is an RDP home. So that's why they want to invest in quick things that give them this quick thing that they get now without working hard. You bet to total 12,000. I'm so happy I can buy my next whatever. So the best thing under the circumstances now, you can't wait. We need to immediately get these young people out of their environment and put them in an environment of the military so they can re-socialize and move out of their geolocation where they are, think things differently. And the beauty about being in that environment, at least to the extent that we know,
no, it teaches discipline.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now you'll see a man. Good. No. These 2 years has done something wonderful for my.
But it means there's a lot you have to do with the military.
Correct.
Already.
Correct.
When they get there, it is what you imagine it to be.
Absolutely. Beyond just the training, what do you do with addicts?
Yeah.
There's serious addicts that you must deal with first.
Before,
then filter and allow those addicts to be healed, taken through a process, and then of the military conscription and training.
There's some who will say you're giving guns to too many people.
Remember, when you are there, you when you finish your conscription, your guns would be within a controlled environment where you are in, and even if you are deployed. But I don't see us deploying people who've been in conscription for 2 years only.
No, I agree with that. I'm just saying gun training on its own.
It's important. The problem with black people is that we can't defend ourselves. And there's nothing wrong. White people, when we are watching Kaiser Chiefs, the derby, they're chisaring nyama at the shooting range and enjoying. So, and from an early age, they learn how to defend themselves. So it's important for us to be able to defend ourselves. Yeah. Being able to defend yourself has a subtle message that you are able to commit serious havoc, but you've got the discipline to not, because you know. And that alone, that acknowledgement of others knowing that, hey, they will defend themselves, they will not get there, because they know that we are disciplined and we can defend ourselves as black people. And I think that's also missing in our current society.
Yeah.
Anything.
So
Baphuza amabhiya, bahamba baboleka namabhiya.
No, ungari ngiyobaleka baphethe ibhamu ngenzeni.
So I think we need to change that in building the citizens of the future. And I think the conscription also gives us the benefit to reset, rewire these millions of young people.
Here's another point, and I keep saying it, a very expensive approach.
And I say it's far better paying that there than paying it in arresting.
And rehabilitation.
And
prisons.
And prisons. So we need to find these young people who don't have a path, get to these 2 years to put them in this program, and then have a path for them after that. And a path that speaks to specific types of training, which links to the education question. So we firmly believe that there's some areas of education that are taught in universities that must move out and become colleges. Teaching, nursing, policing, and in the built environment, which we call engineering.
We used to have that.
It's very, I think those things we
You're returning us. You realize we're returning us conscription. It's an apartheid policy. Colleges, it came with apartheid. I'm not saying it was wrong because it was apartheid, but those are some of the things that were done in the past.
It worked significantly, including subsidization of the agriculture and manufacturing.
That was part of that.
So
that's why Land Bank, I think, was created in the first place.
But now government is not facilitating to compete with the world without giving us the advantage or the platform to compete with the world in the security. So the globalist approach is to say, open, let's just all compete. Don't protect your people either with subsidization and all of that. Where we are, we need those. It's life and death for us. So any sensible government looking after its people will start there. You won't start with saying, let's first talk to private sector, and private sector, please, man, come back, come to the party. No, we must remove these ones out of the way first. And once we've removed those ones, then we have those who have a skill and unemployed, and tertiary education perhaps, and we try and match them with the skills available. Another bold move is to take those who are unemployed with the skills in the country and search for skills outside of the country for them, and move, or opportunities rather, outside the country, and move them out of the country to access those opportunities. This is not normal times. It's extraordinary times to have so many young people sitting
doing nothing.
If it doesn't scare people, it scares us, because we recognize the potential and the power in the collective acting of these young people, both negative or positive, what it could do to this country. And then you need to engage in government and public sector partnerships as well to open up the economy. But most importantly, we'll be taking an active role into investing in infrastructure. So the bulk of what we borrow as a country will go towards infrastructure investment, which will then stabilize the environment, keep businesses, cross-subsidize businesses, fund SMMEs, and ensure that we give SMMEs opportunities. But opportunities given to black SMMEs must be for a longer period of time.
Okay.
So we must really start channeling transformation that way, longer period of time. But if you are in the built environment, we must understand why are you into construction? What's your background? Do you have a degree? So we must scrutinize the people we fund.
Let's spend a minute on that, on the entrepreneurs. It comes out strongly in a lot of the not only interviews but also in the information from your party. How do you envision it? That help. I'm a small business. It's that lady that was selling fruits and vegetables on the side of the road. How do you, in practice, really help me out? Is it lower interests in all of that? How do you help me out? And when you say for a longer period, what exactly does that look like?
Well, firstly, we need to have categories of persons or businesses you fund. And I think we need to impose some serious checks and balances. One of them is sweat equity.
Okay.
There are those who will come with a business plan. I've got this idea. Let's put that aside. There are those who say,
I haven't done anything. Yeah.
So we must filter. We must get to those who have done. I've worked for an engineering company for 10 years. I've got this qualification. I can do this, and I'm working and I've done the following. We need to identify people like that as well. The problem with identifying anybody who is then anybody linked to any politician is the type of socioeconomic problems we've created with those people. Okay. With those people, when you invest in those people, look at the socioeconomic problems they create. They are uncontrollable.
How do they do that?
So have you not seen this behavior of this black man who gets tenders and then goes to date a child younger than his own child? And what does that do to society?
Yeah.
What does that do to society? And then those who then start using money to show that you can use money to get what you want and pervert our society. I, in my view, I've seen a lot of them do that. And I start to realize that maybe we are funding the wrong people here. And when you follow a number of them, you actually find out that they have no tertiary education in the same environment. But what they have strong is currency of network.
They know someone.
They know someone. They are a fixer, but busy more. They know they can connect and do this one and negotiate things. But it's actually not the people who have invested sweat equity into something and have got the knowledge. These ones, without the knowledge, they get the tenants, they don't do the work. If they do the work, they subdivide to other people and they substandard.
Who actually do the work.
But then they must cut costs.
Yes.
And now the ultimate product is substandard. So these ones, we must be careful that when we invest into these things, we find competent people, at least people who are in that environment, who have worked for some time in that environment, have education in that environment as well. You start investing along that line. Now, we also want to channel people to saying, you see, you need education to make it.
We do have funders of developmental funders in South Africa. Your GEP, Gauteng Economic Propeller, or IDC, they already exist.
They exist, but they are too fragmented. I was in Kenya a few years ago in Kisumu, on Lake Victoria, if I remember correctly. They took us to a sugar refinery. And the Indians, they are from India. You can see but we are from India. And when they learned that we're South Africans, they were telling us, oh no, IDC actually is a funder. So I asked, but who's a... How does this thing happen? I couldn't get a clear answer.
Yeah. So, IDC is a fund of a project that's happening in Kenya.
Yes, sugar refinery. I could not get a clear answer, but I was left, even still today, where I remember that experience. And I say to myself, these institutions must be consolidated into two.
Okay.
One that looks at South Africans who are leaving the country to go and invest elsewhere or to do business elsewhere. And those in South Africa. And in South Africa, you have different categories, starting with my informal trader ladies from there. And you build.
To guys who want to be...
Correct, ultimately.
Yeah.
But then there must be a clear understanding of funding some people who are saying, Rona, we want to have a bank.
That too.
Yes, it's important we do so. Because they must have institutions that compete with the ones, but that they look like us. Imagine millions of South Africans... supporting and being patronage, supporting Capitec. Capitec declares profit, pays their shareholders. That same profit from there goes then to fund a party. And we say, it's fine.
It's our country, man. It's an interesting story, our country. And I don't think people who Capitec clients really know where their profit goes. I don't think they do. It's not all of us have access to that type of information. Correct. But if you open up the books, you realize, it's the same. They paid for that party.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's why we need to invest in these institutions and have a long-term vision that by this stage we are going to have a competition to Naspers. We're going to have a competition with ABSA and Pick and Pay and ShopRite. And
you're saying black competition.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's what we must be talking about. When now, 30 years later, as we are reflecting about democracy, these are some of the examples we must be sharing.
Haven't we achieved anything in that regard? And allow us, you and I, to look for it, to look for one industry where we got in and we've done something as black people in a free market economy where you do you and I do me. I'm white. And I've been successful, and you come in and try to compete with me. Are you able to find any player in your mind that has done that?
You have a few players across different industries that are really trying. From your asset management, investment companies.
There you go.
That are there, a few of them. They only occupy a very small share of the entire industry. And what makes it even more difficult is that by virtue of who they are, accessing clients is one of the most difficult things in the value chain of finances or in finance industry. But I often like to say which industry, because what demonstrates or reflects that we are significant players in that industry is there's language spoken in that industry. So which industry are you certain or okanobulela spedi thing?
Nah, there's none. There's no point in thinking about it. There's none.
So at least it's an taxi.
Yeah,
But
actually,
the value chain corner is wide.
Of course, it's actually very sad how, yeah.
So
it's very wide. Even the loan of money to buy a taxi, it's a wide industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're at the bottom of the food chain.
We are the buyers.
So I don't understand for the life of me why government and Santaco and the various other players in the transport space have not come together and say, but how do we assist you, Santaco, to, for one, build your own taxis, manufacture your own taxis, you buy your own taxis. From there, how
those are the treaties there. Those are the treaties.
We must deal with those.
Those are clear treaties.
It's not enabling us to invest in our own people and move Santaco to what it is now, right down to a player that's involved in the full value chain of transport, not just of human beings, but of goods and services as well. For me, it seems like a logical thing. And I think, though, we must remove those barriers, which created the situation that we can't engage in the type of development.
A taxi industry, the only industry that has some potential?
Look, I said one way, at least how people speak their own in
language.
Indigenous language.
Yes.
I use that.
Maybe soccer. No, it is. It has a strong a black fan base, like taxis with the strong commuter base. It has a strong black ownership base, I would like to think.
But it's heavily subsidized.
Well,
maybe it's because I don't understand the full value chain of the soccer business.
Yeah, but you don't need to understand it if you understand the customer, because ultimately you have to understand the client.
Yes.
And the clientele of soccer is you and I, about Daki, who sit and watch TV or go to soccer games. You pen through the entire stadium, you'll spot 5 white people. Even the camera goes to them so often because they are an anomaly.
Yeah.
You know, they're an unexpected entity in that setup, including the players.
Yes.
So the participants are black. The consumers of the product are black. Well, the sponsors are white and companies and so forth. The owners are completely white, are black rather. So that means the industry is black, technically. But the broadcasters are different colored. And the owners of the sponsorships, different, because you don't sponsor something you don't benefit from.
Correct.
So obviously when you put your logo on the screen,
that way,
you get something from it. Samsung is a big sponsor of soccer and so forth and so forth. So that's to understand it, you have to understand who consumes it.
Correct.
It's the same as taxis. I would like to think there's enough black presence in it. My only problem with it is that those are the two industries, the only two industries that have been black literally since the beginning of time. And nothing has changed. How do you influence them? That's the question. But I'm asking a much bigger question, using them as an example.
I think they are a base to start, to really start and have these conversations about how do we own the entire value chain of what we consume.
Which also speaks to broadcasting. Is that Nespa's example?
I mean, there's your Nespa's SABC, there's the fight there. I mean, that does it mean we don't need to contest Nespa's and SABC with something different that makes sense? If you look at... so I think there's a strong case you are making, and my view is that government must look carefully at those areas to assist the value. The full vertical integration of the value chain.
Yeah.
So there's proper ownership on those areas amongst the people who consume, and leveraging their buying and spending power is very important. And those two can be a base where we start. But beyond those bases where we start, I started reading up on. I was very curious about ShopRite about 10 years ago. I started seeing them in townships. And I started to see Lolly, it's not who, Visa?
Yes, Christoph Visa.
And I started to see them publish what he earns. And I realized that actually Pick and Pay and Spar started to follow him after.
Yeah. And they've opened a lot of shops.
Yes, where we are. But we have not rivaled that with something. Instead, you do find a lot of black people who own franchises.
That's true.
But no one wants to start, and it's difficult because you need government support to start a value chain and own it, because that value chain of retail is not easy.
I think it's strong in Botswana. I forget the name of the brand in Botswana that would compete with a Pick and Pay, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it starts with land, farming, produce. Where do you get it? Is it sustainable? In fact, not even with produce, with the seeds.
Hey.
So you can plant and harvest, and then the entire value chain, to logistics, to right down to a client.
Yeah.
So I really think that if we can win, if we can break the scale.
We have spaza shops.
Spaza we had.
Okay.
Yes, we had. Abo my friend bought Tatil. We no longer have spaza shops.
You see a sad face. I had a sad face there for a second. So that speaks to your foreign nationals issue.
Correct. They've completely taken over the value chain of spaza shop.
Yeah.
And we try to come up with the Gauteng Enterprise Development Bill or something, which has not affected anything. They keep giving us poison. We march one day, we forget about it next week, another child dies. Then we start again the process. So there's nothing decisive and definitive that we do to deal with that. And ensure that we get those people out of that space, because it does not make sense to leave Pakistan and come into the country to run a spaza shop.
What do you think is happening?
I think there's cartels operating. And I was reading a report that says actually this industry, a spaza shop from these foreigners, is actually fueling your rebel groups, extreme Islamic rebel groups as well in different parts of Africa as well. So there's a link. And someone was making the case some time ago to say you must follow the money and how they're getting money out of the country, utilizing Bitcoin as well, and you can't trace it, you can't tax it, it's gone. So they're coming here at the same time. Where they come from, it's roots of poppy seeds and these drugs that they also find easy access into the country. So I really think the sooner we deal with that, the sooner we protect the lives of South Africans as well. We were looking at a video the other day, which was popular, of one of the foreigners who's speaking Afrikaans. So Diamond Prat.
Probably better than you and I.
Exactly.
Yes.
So now they've assimilated into our communities so much that they even speak our language wherever you are.
Yeah.
So we need to protect. It's a national issue now. We need to protect our citizens. So it's important for us to deal with the issue around migration from those areas and those people operating those spaza shops, because now it's a health and issue. Children are dying, people are getting sick with what they're doing, and at the same time the government is not funding adequately health and safety to be able to have these officers who are moving across the board, who are ensuring that these goods and that they're selling is above board and are safe for human consumption. So, but ultimately everything comes to government not being able to do its core responsibility, then opening up all of these loopholes and people coming to manipulate and exploit them for their benefit. Now then, when we have to react, you can't react within the same limitations.
Of course.
You have to consider extreme measures just to win back the space again of lawlessness and for respect of the laws of the country. That when people come from different parts of the world, when they come here, they must understand that this is a country with laws.
Let's you brought us here 2 points. You speak about lawlessness. Lawlessness leads to criminals, and criminals leads to people imprisoned in jails and all of that. There's always interesting questions. There's always interesting answers to the question, what do you do with criminals? But let's start with, what do you do with solving crime, and then what happens to once these people are criminals and they're incarcerated? Some have suggested all sorts of things. What is your approach?
Solving crime starts with dealing with unemployment, inequality, and poverty. So we must put everything there to ensure that we persuade people from getting into crime, that you've got a job. Someone was saying to me this morning, the quickest way to stop a bullet is to give the man a job. So we must ensure that we create livelihoods and sustain those livelihoods. And in the event you fall out and still find yourself in the situation of crime, you must be processed very quickly. Upon conviction, you must lose your right to vote.
Okay.
Upon conviction. For the duration of the term you are sentenced for, you must not have you lose your right to determine the future of this country because you have committed wrongs in the society. How do you then, while you are convicted, come with us to decide who must lead us. I don't understand that thing. So
I can tell you where it comes from.
We limit your rights.
I can tell you where it comes from. It's actually not a complicated historical reference. Most of our leaders were imprisoned. You know this.
Yes.
So there's no way they would sit in a meeting and agree that if you have a criminal record or you're incarcerated, you lose your right to vote, because they remember that. But maybe I'm very simplistic in my analysis. Yes. There could be a far more bigger reason that says, well, in a democracy, everyone has the right to take part in their democracy.
Subject to, we must qualify it. So those rights must be limited upon you doing specific things. So the moment you commit a crime, during trial, you can vote, but the moment you are convicted and you are sentenced to go and to serve your time in jail for 5 years, for those 5 years, your right to vote is suspended. When you walk out of there and you have paid your debt to society, your right is unlocked again to go and vote.
Like the former President Jacobs.
Yes. So while he was sentenced for 3 months, his right to vote should have been suspended. Coming out now, his right to vote should be effected back. So in the time you are in prison, then what do you do?
That's it.
So we believe that the basis that puts you in prison, you have acted against the people and committed crime. Now that you've committed a crime, you must pay. How do you pay?
Yeah.
We've got children in uniform. I spoke about children having the same uniform.
Free uniform.
Free uniforms. Yeah.
Okay.
They must get potatoes, carrots.
Prisoner.
So once you are there, you will understand that you are going to work. The way you work for the crime you've convicted is hard labor. So we'll even run shifts. We must link it to some production. The best way to say sorry to your community is the output from there. It's not just us keeping you incarcerated in a building only and just a pegged building. But we must get something productive to go back to society. So once you get there, you won't find a situation where they're taking phones with these nice clothes and pay, the pieces, the stove more. When you start to see those pictures, you'll see people busy. And
and all of that.
So that environment, I think we must change. If we change the experience there, we'll certainly persuade people against doing those things. And at the same time, we're able to, beyond just giving them from the fiscus, we're able to get something from them because we are feeding them, clothing them. And you've committed a crime. So our view, and that's why I said we need this parliamentary sovereignty to be able to do these things and say, no, now let's do something different. Once you are convicted, you lose your right to vote. Once you're serving time, you must work for your society and remove parole.
Parole?
Serve your full time.
Whoa.
We must serve you full time. So people must know now you must serve your full time.
There's an argument which I'm not well informed in that says the longer time you serve in prison, you end up committing crime again when you're released because you lose the hope of seeing your people again. You are arrested for 2 years. The hope of being out and being part of your family again continues to be strong because the time is relatively short. You stay for 10 years, you have hope. And then in that 10 years, you lose the hope and become a part of the prison system to a point where you are now a hardened criminal again. What do you say to that?
If all else were equal and did not change, I would agree to that argument. But if we're to change the prisons themselves and introduce the changes we are suggesting now, I don't think anyone would be a hardened criminal with the hard labor continuous for entire 10 years. But instead, what it will do is for those who are outside watching and saying, nah, game on. I'm not choosing that life. Mele kube nalasenza isibonelo esiclear for everyone to see. To say, if you go down this route, these are the consequences of this route. And I believe that we'll get back to normality, where people understand the consequences of acting against society. Remember, our ideology is Ubuntu. We are saying we are umuntu ngabantu, so this communitarian society. So on the basis of you contributing your communal goods to the table of the community, if you act against the community interest, there must be serious ramifications. And part of the serious ramifications is you, upon being convicted, losing your right to vote. And number two, ensuring that once you're in prison, you're working.
Last one, healthcare. It's a crisis that we know very well in our country. It's when you're sick, the last thing you want is to go to a public hospital. Interesting, I have a favorite public hospital, I have to say. Steve Biko in Pretoria. I think it's better run. Yeah, my mom had to spend time there, and she's all right. So what do you say to our healthcare, and how do we overcome its challenges?
The challenges are multifaceted. You can't take away the clients, call them clients, the people they serve, and the fact that the primary healthcare facilities have not grown to keep up with population. So naturally, it means that a ratio between health workers versus people will be much higher. It might also simply means that your waiting time might be more than normal. Then throw in foreigners and illegal foreigners, it makes it even worse.
We don't hire doctors?
Yes, we don't hire doctors, then we go and hire Cuban doctors and send relief. So it does not make sense at any all. Even our nurses are leaving the country at an alarming rate as well. So the infrastructure that we need to invest on, and to ensure that you have at least the specific categories of hospital and healthcare accessible to communities. But I forgot the fundamental point of departure for us is about ensuring wellness and a particular holistic healthcare system for the people. So, in the inclusion of and prevention of these GMI food, etc., and moving away from particular lifestyles as well that affect us. And one of the things we're passionate about is the fact that this white pap that we consume regularly is actually a danger to us. If we're to be honest, there's no nutritious value in what we are eating. And actually, it's a danger to all of our health. So it's
our favorite food,
which by marketing.
Well,
so
we are here now.
But nonetheless, the first part is prevention of needing those facilities through lifestyle and removing things that are harmful for all of us and encouraging a particular lifestyle as a country.
Some would call you a nanny state where you're telling people what to do with their lives.
We must also prevent the things that are harmful to the population generally, which is a staple food. I mean, historically, papa limhlophe wasn't a staple food for us. So limabele and those sort of things that are staple food. So those are much more healthier options. But when you are touching those things, you're touching industries and cartels who will come after you. But let's park that. So now we are saying before, there's a part of prevention and healthcare, I mean, lifestyle and avoid removing GMI food that will hurt us. And these chickens that are more in the pot, it shrinks from being this glass to something smaller than my fist. I mean, those things are not good for us. Now then, the healthcare accessibility ratio between patients to healthcare workers, investment into technologies that are helping our people, doctors as well. Why do you have many African doctors training here and yet South African doctors don't find placement is another question mark. So you need to ensure
we have good training facilities, as it turns out.
But why are our doctors sitting at home? So we can't have good training facilities for the world and not for our own people. So there has to be a ratio. Again, this is where you go back to saying, well, what's the ratio acceptable? That South Africans so much, and then people from outside of the country so much. You need to do so as well. And we need to ensure that there's a universal coverage of health and access to health care. Because even those who use private medical aid, even once it's exhausted, they go to our facilities as well. And so we need to ensure that those facilities are much more stronger. Look at the correlation between where government's failures have been vis-a-vis where the private sector has grown exponentially over the past 10 years. Primary healthcare, education, security. Directly linked to government's direct competencies there.
Security, police, and schools.
Education.
The rise of private schools and healthcare.
Absolutely.
Including private hospitals.
Correct. So now, but they're still running back to our facilities. And arguments have been made. In the research one was doing and listening to some doctors, some were sharing that actually, in terms of some equipment, public hospitals have one of the best equipments as well for operating and doing a number of these things that need to happen. But we're not utilizing them well with the staff that we have and the investment we have as well, and focusing on specific disciplines. But most importantly, you can't have Baragwana Hospital servicing in as much as you have these other clinics around, but Baragwana being the main one for a population of more than 2-3 million people. So there's something wrong in that regard. How we plan for population and access must be very different. So it's investment in a number of these, again, to grow. So we're looking at it holistically. And also the interesting part of how do you then onboard traditional herbal medication onto the system and include that part.
Okay.
Because, I mean, even dipilisi, there's a source, and it could be a few flowers that ultimately you extract this there from that, and you combine. And I really think we must not be ashamed of our herbs that heal, but they have to be working together with medical doctors. The two must converge.
Do you know, I've prepped for this, believe it or not, and I haven't done even half the work. Because I find conversing with you so interesting that I've read up on your political party, and there's a lot to do with Ubuntu and Isiko and where we come from and say it so as we say it. And I haven't even touched any of that.
Yes.
What is the core value of your political party?
Ubuntu.
Okay, explain it.
So Ubuntu is very important to us as a political ideology. For the longest of time, Brad David, we've been assimilating into communism, socialism, liberalism, Marxism.
All these things.
All of these isms.
Yeah, that are brought to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we've never said, how do we develop what is ours? And which protects and enhances our essence as Black people. So we leave our essence as Black people to assimilate into a different culture with a different value system. Once you get there, you become a bit schizophrenic as a Black person, because at home you're something else, in your work environment you're something else, in the village you're something else. So now you're adopting a different value system to play in this space, and you're trying to work for your people, but you are so trapped in a foreign space that the things that matter to you don't come to the fore. And you lose it over a period of time. So we are saying, let's get into politics by not sacrificing our essence as Black people. And that is Ubuntu. So we have given ourselves the responsibility to define Ubuntu and actually show how economics speaks to Ubuntu, governance speaks to Ubuntu, because we can expand it that way.
I read on that, and I was waiting for this explanation. Let's talk to government and Ubuntu in that context.
So the first principle of deploying leadership from the perspective of Ubuntu is that you deploy your most competent. Your most competent. So you don't give someone a responsibility. Even Kasitsu, when the leaders are sitting in a home, they know Horatlo Romamang for this task, and he will get it done. So the same thing with this, we must deploy the best of the best to go and do a specific job for us. And remember, the job is to deliver on the communal table.
Sure.
Not for him to become
for the greater good.
For the greater good.
Yeah.
So the next part, I am because we are.
Yeah.
Also has a very subtle part about the status of the community and the balance, which speaks to law and order. I am because we are. Who facilitates that we are and creates a stability, which is an expression of our society that is balanced. So law becomes very strict in that environment. Now, when you then look at the economy, you also realize that because we are more obsessed about goods to the communal table, it means we're a communitarian society.
Some would say socialist, but carry on.
Communitarian. We say communitarian.
It's fine.
So with communitarian society, how do we utilize what we have that belongs to this land for the benefit of all the people? Now you've got a system where what is beneath the land benefits very few and those who are linked to those people. And the people in that community see trucks coming in and out and watching their economy. and being told that, well, yours we'll develop a school here, we'll give the municipality this there, and your situation gets worse and worse, and yet more and more trucks are leaving.
They come to fetch something.
They come to fetch iron ore, platinum. They are busy. And your environment is just getting more dirtier, more dust. I'll tell you next. So that to us says what is under the earth belongs to the people of this country. In fact, we go further and say, who is the custodian of Ubuntu? As we have defined it, Umuntu abantu, isintu, amasiko. Kimarena. Kimarena, who was the custodian of this? Beyond that, we actually make the admission, Hore, Marena are actually the custodian of land. When we speak land, we speak three things. What is beneath, what is on top, and the laws that govern what happens on top and beneath. Now look at our laws. Do our laws speak to our ancestors or our customary laws?
Of course not.
There's a contradiction. In fact, there's a big tense fight between approving some bill of customary law or not, and the perceptions around that and how it's not consistent with our constitutional democracy, the laws of the people of this land. I have a problem about that.
Yeah.
So for us, with that understanding and point of departure, we believe that actually our kings must be part of governance in a blended democracy that we want to move towards. Komahayeng, and I'm sure you'd agree, when there's issues of infrastructure, they don't go to Nduna or Khos. They go the latter council limit. Even the Khos yaba company So
you're saying the kings and community leaders in that sense lost their power?
They've lost it has been decimated. They've lost their power. That's why a man can go on stage when a spokesperson or a prime minister address I totally mic because there's no consequences. What economic value do you have?
Yeah. You're just you're an appointed figure.
You see that moment for me was a demonstration of the historic arrogance of the government when they look at these traditional kings and queens of ours, because you've removed power and taking power from them, the consequence has been that they lost opportunity for the institution Yamarena to develop over the years. So it brings them them along with our democracy as we see it and the new functionality. So we're moving together. And part of the problem that has created is that no one intervenes when people are misusing culture and tradition. There's no custodian. We can be sitting at home watching TV and seeing a lady saying, I'm a traditional healer, and with the camera and doing all these things. And now no one will be outraged. The next day, we are revoking your license. What you are doing, ayihambela nama values wethu wehlisa abantu usithela sonke ngegazi mayenza kanje. So there's no one who's able to be the barrier or the buffer between the people and politicians. So you see now when things are as bad as they are bad now, there should be a buffer. Someone saying the people are tired. It should be our kings. But because they've been made complicit by the stipends and vehicles, no one is speaking out to say, so not only are they have they lost economic value, governance value, they're also losing moral authority to speak on these issues. And we are watching as the children in society. Why
haven't we modernized our society to a point where we have lost the connection with that type of thinking, of seeing the world, where you and I are born in an urban society where there is no king in our immediate surrounding. Our only reference to a leader is a councillor or a politician and a president and so forth. In our immediate setting, that doesn't exist. It may exist in our families, and our parents may tell us stories of stuff like that. When we go to the people from our families who live in the rural areas, we'll find out, it's the king's house, and they find out, and they want to meet. When I get there, they khoy me with pap and meat. I've had that experience. That's why I'm telling it. But our connection is not sentimental. Our connection is not strong to that type of life. How do you, in 2024, even begin to reverse that?
I don't think it is correct to say we have modernized, and more so when modernization means we have westernized. I think we have deprived ourselves. It's also by design that we must see less of of the relevance of the institution Yabare and lose hope in that. Many people have lost hope because of the situation they find themselves in. More so how they are complicit to the wrongdoings and not speaking out and fighting for us. And I think I must also take advantage of the platform to suggest strongly to them that that means that your Sechaba Sahau chooses to back you because of what you have done. And I think Marenaro and I have forgotten, just because you've got the blood and you are the descendant, therefore, you haven't done any. How so next? Anything that you have contributed to the communal table yourself.
The greater good.
The greater good. So even them, they have forgotten the greater good.
Okay.
So they have really forgotten. That's why you would see this alien behavior where even their living does not reflect the society they are in. Uyabona ukuthi so khona okungahambi kahle la.
Kune-Mercedes Benz manje.
Ezingaka. In the sea of poverty kodwa ubona ukuthi kunenkinga. So you start to see those little things and you realize that no, even they themselves have left us. And we, as people who look up to them, you start to cry out and say, but what are we to do? Or maybe we must accept the old way of traditional kings say
it's gone.
It's gone. Maybe we must revive a new. Or maybe it's time for new ones to show themselves. Because manje ke inkinga ukuthi wonke angeke soyithatha ngegazi kuphelela lapho sewe default. Nabanye abacapable nasikhathi sabasakhona ukucontesta manje. But I know this is a challenge to that to really understand how a young person sees them now. And questions their value even despite the fact that he respects and loves them.
But I think it even starts from not even seeing them and knowing that they exist. I have no reference.
The ones we see are the ones who are wearing different political party shirts. I'm telling you more, and then next again ANC.
Thank you.
So
There's a time on their schedule and a podium speaks to society and tells them in vote la.
Even this practice, which we're discussing a lot with our team, that we must visit Bahrain and there's always when you're trying to interact, okay, nileta in.
You bring nothing. You're here to talk.
Yeah, we are unemployed. So how does a person like me bring something to you? Ukuthi indlebe ezizwayo zikwazi uyi-internalize le message yosikhulumela la kumele bakhulume khona. Instead they're accepting you, they stand like this. So we can't come with a Mercedes. We don't have that money. We will never do that even. So it's those things that keep turning our people away from culture and tradition and these institutions. But we must start, firstly, is to sensitize people and speak about it and make things uncomfortable for those who are there. To start looking at themselves in the mirror and start to awaken. Maybe balele kunyemele sikuvuse. And just but yasho utshana obulelo vusa ngomlilo. So we
alushise eqala then
kuthi kuphakame. But the intention is to really awaken them to this responsibility they have. And how they can actually hold this government to account and not to be complicit.
I've noticed churches starting to do that a lot more than our traditional leaders. And I use churches really making reference to your ATM and ACDP. I can't ignore it in this picture. A lot more than the others. Why do you think that is? Or is it that they're dead to a point where others are finding voice?
Well, it's also a function of them not being funded. They don't receive money from them. So who funds you controls you.
Ooh, that's a common line in this room. Yes. Even Tato is smiling at that. It's a common line.
Controls you.
Yeah.
So secondly, the churches are probably troubled. Increasing unemployment, what does it mean for the church? So the people who come, of a different specific profile. So Havana Chelete, so I must keep praying for people to get jobs, RTPs, and how do we raise funding for the church and to sustain all of these things we are doing. I think maybe it might be a consideration, but it's good because churches or with leaders who've got conscious see what's happening around, and they say we can't just pray. Prayer without action is not going to help.
Even God will say,
no, what did you do? Yes. So I think it's also probably maybe an awakening in the church because the body of church has also been going through some challenges with many bogus people. And I think
that's true.
It's good for others to come onto the fold and say we're going to play a role in politics because we must shape society. But at the same time, restore the credibility of the church as well. So the further the church stays away, I think is bad for the church. Seeing the church come into the space, I think is good for the church because it must make the space uncomfortable for politicians who are lying to keep coming back to them.
Wow. Hey, you're hitting hard. You're shooting from the hip. I want to conclude with this. What are your true ambitions with these elections? Because you had to put in money.
Correct.
Time and effort. You continue. The fact that you're here.
Yes, we are continuing.
Yes.
Look, our ambition is to ensure that we've got representation in the Gauteng legislature and in Parliament. That will give us a solid basis to build for 2026 and to build for 2029.
So you do recognize this as a foundational election for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's very important to also gauge where in other parts of the country where we are only on the national ballot where we get support, because then it's a good platform to build from.
So you're on national and
Gauteng.
And Gauteng only?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. We have a lot of support in Mpumalanga and in Limpopo.
So that's where you're hoping your national vote will come from.
I think across, we've been having a lot of inquiries from across it's Mpumalanga, Limpopo, KZN, Free State, and a bit in Northwest. So those are the areas where we had a lot of presence. So had we had the sufficient money to contest, we'd have contested for about 5 provinces.
Who funds you?
The biggest funder we've had or contribution is 50,000 externally, apart from myself.
Wow.
50,000.
Somebody said,
yeah, said, hey,
good luck.
I feel for you. You love this thing of yours. You are committed, and I think you're a credible person. Here's 50,000. Go and try, my brother.
You realize that there are parties that have 12 million, 15 million.
15 million, but nothing comes for nothing. And for us to insulate ourselves to go through this process is actually going to facilitate our sustainable growth.
Yeah.
I firmly believe in the route that we have taken. And when we persuade people, it's genuinely so. It's not issues about monies that we can't explain. People see that sometimes we've got pamphlets, sometimes we don't have pamphlets, sometimes
posters.
We've got T-shirt, posters.
Yes.
We only had,
I've seen a few posters.
Yes, we had we printed about 1,000 posters which we kept, and every month we're releasing 100 just on the M1 so people can see.
I even heard that you repurposed some of Panyaza's posters.
Yes, I mean he was littering. We had to recycle him. It was after the state of the province address.
Oh, so the board was still left on
They were left there, and they're littering our community.
So you took the board from Panyaza's project and put your own poster on it. Hey,
so
yeah, because you put flour and you stick it and put it back.
We repurposed them. Wow. I mean, we were in Ekurhuleni once, and we saw the Ekurhuleni team, which was removing these posters. Yeah, we had to beg those team.
Oh, because they were probably going to burn them.
Yeah, so I said, no, guys, give us. We had to go to the depot and take from the depot.
Oh, so they didn't even give you?
They didn't even give us. They said, we've already marked, there's a report, so rather, you must go to the depot.
Follow us.
Yes.
We're going to throw them away.
So it's those things we've had to do. Now we had to learn that a bit of water, flour, and lemon juice.
I didn't know about the lemon juice.
We were taught the lemon juice one part of that it sticks a bit. But the moment it rains,
yes.
So
fortunately, it's a winter election, semi-winter election.
Significant rain.
That's true.
So now it means those that we invested that lasted for about 2 weeks now are all gone. So we've got a few 3 here on the M1. So now we must take the next 100, put back. There's about 4 or 5 weeks left. So we can't use everything.
God, what keeps you going, man? Because you seem like you're swimming against the tide.
Inkan.
God.
Yeah,
You're just stubborn.
I'm beyond sengimdala manje. I'm beyond saying I'm inspired and motivated. Into mangithe ngiyayenza nginenkani.
Sure.
Hayi ngizovuka ngiyenze ukuthi ngilala nginjani ngivuka nginjani bathini ku Twitter kusasa I get up ngiyayenza futhi lento ngiyasho ukuthi hey nginophela endleleni ngiyofika lapha inkani.
Because amount to your figure laphana, what is that destination for you?
Ultimately is to grow and build a formidable party of the future. So I must walk this journey with those I'm walking with this journey to build and lay a solid foundation to cultivate and nurture the type of leaders we need. So
and you think they exist in society?
They exist. They are there. They are there. Already we're starting to see this eagerness of these young people who want to join, who want to learn. So there's lots of exciting things happening in the party who are learning. I mean, there's people who go deep slot who sacrifice so much for the party. They've stopped looking for a job. They're volunteering their time to walk with me, doing doctors.
Doesn't that make you feel bad?
That inspires me more to work harder.
Okay.
Because people believe in what we believe. There's more people who believe in this, who are giving legitimacy behind this grand idea and vision working towards. So I firmly believe now more than ever that I am actually a custodian of this party.
You have to.
I'm just a custodian.
You're a caretaker.
I'm the caretaker.
Yeah.
I'm the caretaker. My role now might not be to see the glory.
Sure. So that means that this is a long, long game.
This is a lifetime project.
Wow.
This is a lifetime commitment.
You make me teary. You make me soft. Because this is a huge sacrifice.
It is. And I'm happy.
You're right.
I'm more healthier than I've ever been.
Wow.
I'm more content in life than I've ever been. Now more than ever, I understand the difference between ukusonta and ukukholwa. If I did not go through this, I would not understand the difference between ukusonta and ukukholwa.
Because ukusonta is a visit.
Yeah, ukukholwa enye into.
So manje you are...
No. Now I feel I'm elevated to that level where I don't worry about money. I don't worry about what am I going to do with this. I accept.
Do you understand now, maybe, or maybe some will, the Mandela sacrifice, the Sisulu sacrifice, when there was nothing? It's not the ANC we see today. Yeah. It was the ANC with nothing.
Yes.
Nothing at all.
Yes.
If anything, there were more problems than there were solutions. That's the ANC that led to Abu Owar Tambo and Abu Sisulu. That's the ANC that's the era that created Abu Sobukwe with the PAC. It's a big sacrifice. It's a sacrifice that says, I will die for this.
Sure, I'm not sure what I would equate it there. Maybe posterity will equate it for me, but for me, it's a real big sacrifice that I'm happy to serve, and it has taught me a lot. I've grown a lot. My backbone tell you something.
Yeah.
So it has taught me to be a man.
Sure.
And in leadership and conviction. It has taught those things were words.
At some point.
At some point, they were just words. Now I understand.
Sure.
And it has taught me humility. Starting something when you are somebody and going back to the ground and walking those streets and not being ashamed to get into people's homes and people chase you away.
But
come back the next day,
I'm a politician. That's fine.
But most people are not blue light. La manje ufuna so buye kithi futhi. Ufuna ukubuyela futhi lapha ya.
Ufuna ukundlula futhi ngeblue light. And it's thina 6-5.
Yeah, ushange dust futhi.
Cool.
So that part you can't avoid that, but you see it's the start.
You've had that.
I have experienced that.
Wow.
And I go back, and a number of those people who were saying that are members of Shiluba today.
That's amazing. I've had journalists ask you why the choice of a Tsonga name. You could have gone English. You could have gone abbreviation. You can go on very easy, EFF, ANC. Everybody goes that direction. Why flower? Why that direction?
Well, firstly, flower, because we believe we are flowers to this nation. It's those communal goods we're going to deliver.
Yeah.
We're going to deliver the flowers to this nation. And the natural process of growing flowers, firstly, you must work the soil. And clean, put in the seeds, water, nurture, and then ultimately others will just see the output.
Yeah.
So the flower for us illustrates our delivery methodology of emphasis of output and outcomes. But most importantly, Shiloba is a beautiful word. Strategic as well with the placement on the ballot. And we also said we are also going to follow an indigenous African ideology. So I have a gamala corn.
If you're going to say it, you must
so we must
do
say
it.
African National Congress.
And then say we are an African.
No, I see busy that way and disrupt.
Yeah.
So let's give birth to something that's not there, that does not exist. So many people must ask why? Because we have gone against the grain. Because now we are saying, as young people, as this generation, we are giving of ourselves to start working the soil. Maybe for me to plant or others to plant. But my part, I must do the first part. So Shiloba is a constant work in progress, watered and nurtured by the tears of our mothers who see their children wallowing in nothingness, in unemployment, in drugs, in all these things happening. But also disappointment, the fact that the government they had hope in has disappointed them and delivered the reality we see today.
Yeah.
And further nurtured by the tears of young people who are saying, but what about us?
Is it a strategic position in the ballot? It's at the bottom.
It is, but with now the draw, it has put us...
there's been a draw.
Yes, but it hasn't affected us too much, but it was quite strategic. That
so it would have been literally the
last one.
Last.
And it's... we can't... When you vote for Shiloba, it won't be by mistake.
Yeah.
It will be by intention. There is no other. There is no other that looks like us. There's lots of AUC... AMC,
of course, ATM, AT this, ACDP.
So for us, it will be intentional.
Yeah.
It will be intentionally empowering. So when people are voting, they will actually be watering the plant.
Yeah, for the flower.
Yes, they will be watering the flower.
There's a call for postponement of the elections. I wonder. We wait. There's naturally the pending case, the Gelehlegisa's pending case. However, IEC has to put his face on the ballot. We might have a rubbed, which will complicate the elections, where there's a party that's rubbed with a sticker. So we'll see what happens. In 1994 elections, we had a party that was placed after the ballot was printed. And it was placed right at the bottom. That's the IFP. So
I wanted to pull out.
Exactly. I understand, though.
Yeah.
And I understood.
I think it's unlikely, though, now.
No, completely. But remember, we have a pending case.
Yes.
With MK. So,
but the proceeding of the IEC is to accept the current ruling, and we might make amendments on the basis of a new ruling, which is a safe way. But nonetheless, it won't affect us.
No, not at all. I'm just. I think we have to agree that this is an interesting election.
Absolutely, and more interesting because the old has reinvented themselves and fool people to think that it's a new book. Meanwhile, it's the last chapter of their books.
I still believe ANC will do well. Numbers only. The numbers are big, and I'm curious to know, what are your ambitions from a numbers point of view? What are you hoping to achieve? Politics are numbers.
I won't speak numbers.
Okay.
But we will have a number of seats in Parliament and in Gauteng legislature.
Oh.
We will. And on that basis, we'll build a solid foundation for local government elections. We will increase our representation across the country, which will then give us a step closer to a much more successful and growth in 2029 elections. And fortunately, because one is still young, you can plan.
Can plan for the next 20 years.
Correct. You can plan and have that trajectory of planning and be able to. But I think beyond just the ANC, in our view, and the DA are going to be the biggest losers.
Yeah. However, the ANC's loss will still give it enough running space to get a 50% with a coalition than a DA loss that may require a lot more people to get to a 50%. So that's why I say ANC. It's interesting. Somebody said ANC will achieve 65%.
Oh no, that's
No. They're saying they will get there, assuming 45. That's what everybody seems to be saying. All they need is another big party, EFF, and many other smaller parties. Together, they'll bring in a 65. We'll see what happens.
Which is likely in terms of the various scenarios.
IFP is in there. Yes.
But the scenario that many people have not accounted for is what new parties will do.
That. A lot of people cannot put that scenario in place except for just talking about MK. They can't talk about yourselves. They can't talk about ATM because they say we don't know what to base it on.
Correct.
Even Action SA, for that matter, they don't know what to base it on. But they can say we've seen Zuma do this.
Correct. And he's contested a few by-elections to give the data for it.
That's it. Even now.
Correct.
Which has shown surprising performance.
Correct.
And a lot of people are saying, this guy's going to show a bit of flames. He's going to disrupt.
Absolutely.
You came out once, and I want to conclude it on that, and said stuff about cadre deployment in relation to the DA. What is cadre deployment in relation to the DA? Does it even exist?
I've contested the view when the DA said they don't do cadre deployment.
Yes.
They do cadre deployment. They do agree strategically at FedEx level who must be appointed where. They have conversations about municipal managers, city managers, and also senior staff, to the point where they even decline an appointment made in a panel that they have not been part of. So this happens. I think any political party must have an interest on the senior appointments it makes, because you must ensure that whoever is appointed, as qualified and as capable as they are, they're also aligned to what the party is trying to achieve. And cadre deployment has been bastardized by the ANC, because what they have done is actually deploy people to go and steal and cripple state organizations and the fiscus, as opposed to getting capable persons who appreciate what the party is trying to do, who are competent, experienced to go and work to improve the lives of our people. So they must not shy away. They might call it something different. That's why Tate Maimane was asking for minutes of a particular meeting, which he can prove that those conversations happened. It was minuted. It was agreed that this appointment must continue, that appointment must not continue. So whilst they are trying to show the one party off, they must also be honest and say, but in South Africa, we also take...
we do this.
Do the following.
Inherently, there's nothing wrong in saying we want you to go look after that, because we feel you are capable of looking after it. And you are part of it. We can trust you because you're part of our political ambitions. Is there anything wrong with that?
You must split this. To a level, you can do that with political appointees. Then there's senior managers, which you must also have an understanding of the process, what happens. Some go far and give a name before the thing has started. But there should be safeguards. So we can't take anybody who with no record and who won't make it through a legitimate process, and who, is not qualified for the position. So you can't do that. So you must appoint the top performing persons, even though they might be politically aligned to yourself, because it's at a senior level. But below senior managers, the consideration of political inclination or support must not even be a consideration.
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever. They just want professionals, solid, cold professionals.
Are you likely to go into a coalition with anyone we know?
We have not made a decision. Our decision is that we must get into an election without having entangled ourselves with anybody. Let's test our brand on the strength of who we are and what we have, and a determination will be made after when we have been elected into parliament and we've got a margin enough to make a meaningful contribution. Otherwise, it does not make sense to get to parliament with 10 seats, and then cause havoc. One must be circumspect about what you are trying to do in your environment as well. So it must be circumspect. So, and then coalition to an extent scares us as well, because of how it's so fluid. And
there are no safeguards.
There are no safeguards. And what scares me most is a coalition with more than 3 parties at national. it would be extremely, extremely irresponsible for us to allow for a coalition of more than 3 parties to run the country.
Why do you wonder about the 3 parties versus 2, for example?
Maximum. So I'm saying the maximum is 3 that could be part of. If it's 2, it's even better. If it's 2, it's even better. But to have more than 3 parties will be a disaster.
Yeah.
There won't be a centre government. There won't be a president who's a real president and who runs government with all the partners. You will have parties saying, Rona, we've got an interest in this, we are going there. So while the president makes a statement about this, these ones will be going left.
Making a different statement.
Correct. So that will really undermine and break the government.
Imagine a vote of no confidence every second month.
Oh man, it will be disastrous. We won't have a country left by then. So I really hope that even though we're part of the losers, but what we would strongly speak for in the next after the elections is to ensure there's minimal parties in a coalition at the national level. You can't have more than 3 parties. It's going to be a disaster.
Speak to your voters.
We want to say, when you go and vote in these elections, it's a different consideration. The situation is far more different today. It requires a different solution. The Oxford Dictionary will tell us that insanity is doing the same thing many times and expecting a different result. So in these elections, let's change what we do. Let's vote for credible leadership, tried and tested leadership, young leaders who can take this country forward. Shuluba is that party for you that could carry your aspirations into the future and deliver on the aspirations because of who we are as a party that is unencumbered, a party that is focused on delivering to the communal table for all of us for our benefit. So when you go and make your X, you understand that you are planting or nurturing the seed that will grow to be a flower. A flower will be the output we deliver when we're in government. So we're asking South Africans to start the journey with us when you go and vote. The young and the old, the time is now to think differently about the future and to elect on the basis of those who are competent and can deliver for the future. So when you vote for Shuluba, you are voting for exactly that. We're encouraging people to go out and vote for something as opposed to vote for against something. So vote for Shuluba, our hope, our future.
Bongani Baloyi, with Coco.
Thank you.
I wish you well, man.
Thank you.
I enjoyed this thoroughly.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Took us 3 hours, 10 minutes, non-stop.
That's how long it was.
I remember I had a conversation with a PAC leader, and it was an hour and 10 minutes, give or take 11 minutes. And so he said, that's the shortest Brad Davis ever spoken to anyone. And you have no idea. Trust me, if it was my choice, he would have stayed here longer. He was rushing to the airport. Thank you again. No, I really wish you well. I think it's an interesting election, this. And because I speak to so many politicians, I realize the importance of these conversations, and I certainly hope that a lot of people get to see them. And I'll tell you why more than any other reason. People get to actually explain their manifestos in a lot more thorough detail than any other platform. Even when you're standing on a podium,
this you can get to detail.
Exactly. There's no disruption of all of that. And I've noticed that is probably the one true benefit of this, because I was quite reluctant to do these political interviews. But now I'm sold. They must all come. Thank you so much. I wish you well.
No, I really appreciate the platform.
Anytime. There it is, eh? Wow, that was fun. If you got this far, you might as well subscribe.
King David Studio Podcast.